Hey, warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Eaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got a great podcast for you guys. Joining me in segment number 2, we've got Nick Lorensen aboard. He does great work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this game of basketball that we all know and love, and we're going to be diving in with what he's all made out of the first 2 weeks of the season, what he's looking forward to with regards to Feast Week, how important this is with regards to these teams as well, because I do think that now is when the rubber really meets the road for a lot of these teams in terms of being able to build a resume, in terms of actually knowing what we're getting out of these teams, because I do think that the first week or two, those first few games, are a little bit of a feel-out process. Now I feel like we're getting a little bit more of an understanding of what these teams are. So we're going to be diving in on that in segment number 2 with our good friend Nick. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great day of college basketball on Monday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Now, full disclosure, because I do have to do the Greg Peterson experience on VSiN from 9 to midnight Pacific time. If you're looking out there on the East Coast, that would be midnight to 3. I'm going to need to do a little bit of cleanup on the late games for this on the podcast tomorrow, just because as of right now, that UCLA versus Marquette game has yet to tip. We don't know what we got out of like my DK Network Write-Up pick in UTEP versus Cal either, so we do need to keep that in mind. But that said, we did see a just complete and utter pulverizing by Hofstra of Buffalo, 102-68. Hofstra right now looking like one of the best mid-majors in all of college basketball. Recognize that they lost to Princeton and George Washington, but I don't make too much out of that, as Hofstra, they look very good in the backcourt. A combined 51 points out of Darlson Dunbar along Tyler Thomas. If they're able to get a little bit more down low out of Jaco Fritz, he had 8 rebounds in this one. It's going to be quite tremendous. And for Buffalo, man, how the mighty have fallen. Anquan Bolden Jr., yes, he is of relation to that Anquan Bolden, was able to give you 12 points in the backcourt, but not a great display there. This was a great display, though. UConn wins, covers, they take down Texas by a count of 81-71. UConn has failed to cover one non-conference game since the start of the 2022-23 season. That, ironically enough, was when they were laying north of 45 points against Mississippi Valley State. But for UConn, they didn't even look like overly dominant in this one. It was just workmanlike. Alex Caravan was able to chip in their 20 points. You've had great versatility out of both Tristan Newton along Cam Spencer. Newton wasn't really on with regards to scoring, but had 8 assists. He had 4 boards. Cam Spencer, 16 points, 5 assists, 5 boards. They've all bought in, and for Texas, they just look to be a little bit out of sorts in general. Tyrese Hunter, I know that he had a little bit of an ailment that he was playing through. He was still able to give the team 13 points, 7 assists, and for Texas, credit where credit is due. They only had 6 turnovers, but got pulverized on the glass, losing that battle by a count of 40-29, as they were without Caden Shedrick in this one as well, so that was a little bit less than terrific for the old Longhorns. What was pretty terrific, though, is the fact that Bryant was able to follow prosperity. We saw them be able to take down Florida Atlantic, and strangely, this line was only 4.5. It became a little bit of a sweat, but Bryant, they do not have a letdown. They're able to take down Howard by a count of 67-61 as Seth Towns came in off the bench, 16 points, 9 boards. He, by the way, I mean, he's a Van Wilder of college basketball. He's in his 8th season. Looks like he's actually going to be able to contribute this year, so nice to be able to see that. And for Earl Timberlake, he brought Sexy back. He was able to give the team 19 points. You also saw Florida State be able to take down UNLV out there in the great state of Florida, 83-75. This is a UNLV team I just feel like is a little bit all over the place. And for Florida State, this wasn't necessarily a high possession game. They only took 51 field goal attempts, but they were able to shoot nearly 63% from the floor. You had 19 points, 8 boards out of Jameer Watkins, the transfer from VCU. Looks like he's going to be a real impact player. And the question for UNLV is, what are you going to be able to get down low out of this team? Because you do bring in the Boone brothers, but still, they lose the rebound battle 27-24. And for Florida State, they were able to get a pretty solid win over UNLV, in my opinion. This was a solid win as well. Purdue was trailing against Gonzaga at the half, but they were able to rally for a 73-63 win. And I always do say this, even with a losing team, sometimes you can be left a little bit impressed. We'll talk about this on the podcast tomorrow with our good friend Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports. But for Gonzaga, Graham Ike was able to sink a pair of threes, showed some nice versatility with 14 points, 7 boards. Backcourt looked to be a little bit out of sorts. They lost their turnover battle 14-13, and shock, surprise, surprise. You had Zach Edey be able to dominate down low, 25 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 blocks, but Gonzaga actually played even up on the glass. What was the difference maker for Purdue was that they were able to do a nice job of keeping Gonzaga off the line. Gonzaga just 5 of 8 at the free throw line and 6 of 32 from three-point range. Part of it was Gonzaga was a little bit cold in this game, but Purdue was a little bit cold as well. 4 of 17 from 3. Clearly, at this year's Maui Invitational, it's not the same friendly rims that we typically see out there when it is at Lahaina, but still, it was a very solid win for a Purdue team that is really flexing their muscle right now, and this turned into a little bit of a hairy situation, but Indiana, if you took the late number, they got you a push. Took the early number, they got you a cover. 74-66 the final. Indiana has things to sort out. The backcourt, a little bit out of sorts. They went 1 of 11 from three-point range, and it just feels like when Mackenzie Mbakbo and Malik Renew are out there, they're not as effective as, say, someone like a Peyton Sparks, who was an impact player, and Anthony Walker. Walker chipped in there 11.7 boards. Sparks, 9 points in 14 minutes. So he lived up to his name. He gave the team a spark, and for Louisville, apparently Kenny Payne was tricked when Indiana went to a zone defense, which that shows how incompetent he is. But for Louisville, they go 5 of 19 from three-point range. You actually had Sky Clark giving you 19 points, but it's a bad decision-making in general with the 4 turnovers. And for this Indiana team, certainly a little bit off put by them. They've only been able to cover, I believe, now 2 spreads this far this season. But you know what? That was a pretty solid effort that they were able to give you if you took the spread with them laying the points. This was the ugliest first half I've seen all season long. The Citadel and Idaho State had a 36-point first half. Idaho State was up 23-13, but the Citadel rallied. They win 62-61 with a 49 spot in the second half. Ed Conroy doing some good work with the Citadel team. A.J. Smith, 7 of 11 from the floor. He's always open to being able to give you some wins. And for Idaho State, they went 4 of 17 from three-point range in a game that was just very slow, very controlled in general. And if you want slow and controlled, Tennessee always delivers on that front. If you, like me, had the points with Syracuse, this was brutal. Syracuse down 5 points with 2:50 remaining, and they don't cover 14, they don't cover 13, and they don't cover 12.5. 73-56. Tennessee is able to get it done now. You do want to be watching for the status of Toby Awaka. Limited just 1 minute in this one, so that's a little bit of a concern for Tennessee moving forward, but Dalton did connect for 17 points. And how about Josiah Jordan-James, who has been in college basketball for seemingly 500 years, 15 points, 12 boards, had a pair of steals. That was very encouraging, so they were able to get the job done. This was an impressive showing as well. Stephen F. Austin completely took apart Drake, 92-68. I always say that the Stephen F. Austin style is so hard to prepare for because they do such a good job swarming to the ball, forcing turnovers. Well, for Stephen F. Austin, even though they lost the turnover battle 17-13, they went 14 of 23 from three-point range, including a 4 of 6 three-point shooting performance out of Nana Atiwi Boasiko. He's a 6'9" combo gentleman that was able to do a nice job from the outside there. For Stephen F. Austin, not really one feature guy, just everyone working in concert. Meanwhile, for Drake, they were able to get 19 points out of Kevin Overton, nice freshman there, but he did have a little bit of a rough one from Tucker DeVries. He had 11 shot attempts and just 10 points, so a little bit off-putting there. I personally thought Iona was going to come out with a good performance against High Point, and instead Iona was a low point, 82-68 the final for High Point, 12 of 28 from 3, 26 of 30 at the free throw line. Sometimes you just have some shot variance not go your way, and for Iona, they just had not a lot going on against this High Point team, as currently they're dealing with a injury to their 7-footer in Osborne Shema, and that allowed High Point to win the rebound battle 39-28 as well. And then This was a slog. It was a big slog, but Wisconsin, 65-41, they take down Virginia. Virginia might not be back after all, as for the Cavaliers, well, they might be back to disappointing, as they lost the rebound battle in this one, 48-21. Virginia had 21 total rebounds. Wisconsin had 20 offensive rebounds. Stephen Krull, Tyler Wall combined for 24 points, 20 rebounds for this Wisconsin team. They have not gotten a lot out of Connor Essegian as far as this season. That's been a little bit sad to see, but you were able to have Chucky Hepburn give out 6 assists, did not turn the ball over even once. And for Virginia, they kept it very efficient. Reese Beekman had 17 points. Problem was, nobody else gave the team double figures, so that was a little bit of a fiery heap for Virginia. This is going on as I do this podcast, but Kansas was actually close at the half with Chaminade, 39-27. I felt like this line should have been like 50 with Chaminade. They weren't even good at the Division II level, and Chaminade actually won the turnover battle. I don't know if it was just Kansas being asleep at the wheel or what have you, but not necessarily the world's greatest first half from Kansas. We'll see what happens in the second half, as I do have to record this a little bit in advance. And Tulsa, a team that covered just 4 spreads a season ago, they've already got their 3rd cover of the season. They were able to take down South Carolina State 90-70. So good signs there. And if you are taking a look at the great game of college basketball right now and some of these betting splits, we have been still seeing quite a few overs, so it does feel like the unders are getting just a little bit hotter, and I've been able to cash for you just a touch more. As for the overall outlook of the season, this is with Monday having a few games still pending. We are currently at 50.8% of games going over, 344 overs to 333 unders. Favorites continue to still be hitting like wildfire, 350, 324, and 10 against the spread. And something else I'm monitoring, home underdogs have been rough against the spread, 62, 67, and 2 against the spread. I do think that that's going to be rebounding, and if you look at just the last 7 days in college basketball, unders are hitting at a 53.5% clip, 182 to 158 with a few pushes along the way. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got in college basketball on Monday. Like I said, a little bit of cleanup coming on the podcast tomorrow, but that said, let's talk to Nick Lorensen. He does great work over at Mid-Major Madness. We'll be talking about what has been standing out to him this far this season, a few teams that he's watching for, and what he's liking to see this week, some of the teams that he's got his eye on, some of the big tournaments that are going to be defining how we take a look at the college basketball landscape. That's up next, right here on Cuts Good Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Sports Betting Innovative Analytics has taken the guesswork and emotion out of sports betting to bring you an innovative and trustworthy resource to enhance your journey to becoming a winning player. With industry-leading money-back guarantee options backed by their sophisticated modeling, they want to introduce you to a system that's not widely seen or available to help you beat the bookmaker. Specializing in NBA, college basketball, and WNBA, your first week is always free. Get started at SBIA1.com today.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cuts Good Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this gentleman, as we've got Nick Lorensen aboard. He does a great job over at Mid-Major Madness. He does some terrific work just being able to diagnose the game of basketball. And now I know he's been doing some great work over with Queens NC. We saw them on Saturday get the job done against Fairfield. That was one that made me particularly happy. Queens NC, one of the newest of the Division I programs, and you're able to follow Nick on Twitter at N. His last name, Lorensen, that is spelled Lorensen, and then sports all together. And Nick, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I always love hopping on here. This is the first time we're talking this year with some hoops that has actually been played, and it's been a fun first 2 weeks. There's been upsets galore. We're going to talk about it later. Lots of fouls. It's been a fun product. I think parity's at an all-time high. We're recording this on Saturday. FAU fell to Bryant. We have JMU, who's undefeated in the top 25. That's why we love the sport. You never know what's going to happen every year.
Yep, you don't ever know what is going to happen. And what have you made, first things first, out of the increase in fouls? Because scoring is way up in college basketball. And I will also say this. I think that the fouls have also led to a decrease in turnovers as well, and perhaps teams going for those turnovers. But what have you made out of it in general? Because I do feel like maybe the whistles have went a little bit too far, and it's very clear that that was a point of emphasis in the offseason.
Yeah, the biggest point of emphasis was that block charge call, and we're seeing a lot more blocks than we are charges. So you see a lot of these guards going downhill looking to rack up those fouls, get to the line, get into the bonus. And obviously we've seen that with the higher scoring games this year. So it's made an impact. It was a big emphasis over the offseason, and they're really hitting it while the iron's hot early on this season. So it's been a difference maker.
Yeah, it certainly has been a difference maker. And what sort of teams do you think that this has been an advantage/disadvantage for? Because I do think that it is really interesting to take a look at this lay of the land in college basketball, because I always do lean a little bit more early on to the season to defense-oriented teams. But if you're racking up a bunch of fouls and you don't have a lot of depth, that really puts these teams behind the eight ball.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's teams that are defensive-minded, like a Drexel. I know it's not impacted them yet, but it could impact them in the future when we come to CAA play, because these teams know that they're going to be aggressive. It could cause them some trouble, but you have teams with good guards who can go downhill. That's where the difference is. If you have a good downhill guard team, you're going to be set. A team like Fairfield, they really didn't run their guards downhill. We saw that as an impact. They only went to the line, I don't know, they didn't go to the line a lot, and then they ended up resulting in a 9-point loss. You have teams in the A-10 like a GW. GW started the season 4-0. They're fast, they're aggressive, they're quick, and that's why they're at something like that. But then you have like a St. Bonaventure team who doesn't really use their guards all that much. Start the season 2-2, struggle against Longwood, lose to Canisius. So teams that are guard heavy, these fouls are really helping them because they can use their guards. They can make them go downhill and hopefully get to the line, make these shots. But if you're more front court heavy, and we've seen it with a team like Charleston too. Charleston is all post play this year. Their guards aren't as strong as they were last year, and that's been a real difference maker because they're not able to drive these guys in, get these foul calls, and if the big men are going to the line, they aren't making it all that much. So teams that are guard heavy, these fouls are definitely helping so far.
Yep, they certainly are helping them out, and obviously teams that hit their free throws benefiting as well. It just feels like free throw shooting in general is down in college basketball right now. We shall see if that rebounds just a touch, as Nick Lorensen, who does great work over at Mid-Major Madness, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I think it has been so interesting what we've seen early on during the season, because we have seen a lot of blowouts early on from these ranked teams. Seems like UConn, when they've been going up against the likes of Northern Arizona, been able to get the job done. You've been seeing these teams that are just completely outgunned going up against Creighton, just having absolutely no shot whatsoever. But it feels like outside of really some of those top flight teams, the two that I listed off before, obviously, even though they took a loss, Duke, Arizona, teams like this, I feel like the top of the top is very much better than everyone else in college basketball. But I feel like perhaps the middle class in college basketball might be as wide and expansive as it ever has been, where you get a team that's ranked like number 30 going up against number 75, number 80, just spitballing a number. I feel like the margin is as close as it's ever been.
I mean, we saw that on Saturday. I'm looking at it right now. It feels like every other game was either within a possession or two or went to overtime. It's ridiculous how close the competition level is this year. And, I mean, it's because of the transfer portal. We talked about it all offseason. If you're going to get a chance to play, you're going to transfer down or whatever, and you can help make your team stronger. So there really isn't that much of a difference between, say, the 20th ranked team, the 90th ranked team in the country. But you have teams like UConn who go up and they play, like you mentioned, Northern Arizona, like the bottom 50 teams in the country. Of course, they're going to blow them out. But those teams that have done well in the transfer portal and they have good systems and all that, you can compete any night. You can compete any night out there. We saw it with Southeastern Louisiana, who is a favorite in the Southland, go up against Santa Clara, who's supposed to be maybe 3-4 in the WCC. Santa Clara's been blowing out everyone. It's because they're playing lower-ranked competition. But Sela's been able to get some transfers coming in. They're supposed to be top of their conference. It was a 2-point game, and it was close the whole time. So the competition level is definitely closer than it's been a lot of the past years, and we've been talking about it for the last couple of years. The competition gap keeps getting smaller, smaller, and smaller. It's moving in the right direction. I think this is the smallest it's been yet.
Yep, I do agree with you there. I do think that for a team like a Southeast Louisiana, I still think the difference between they and Arizona so very, very large, and honestly it might be a little bit wider than it has been in past years. But that middle class in college basketball, any team outside of, I would say, the top 20, man, you're at risk every single night, and that is something that I'm certainly taking note of. And when it does come to some of those teams more in the middle of college basketball, teams that maybe we weren't expecting a ton from. There have been a few thus far this season that really have been catching your eye, because I know that you were mentioning Southeast Louisiana. I think that they're going to be solid out there in the Southland, and we saw Nichols get a win over LSU as well, so shout out to the Southland there. But who are a few teams that you've been able to take a look at the first 2 weeks of the season, and you've just been really impressed by them?
Yeah, one's George Mason. When you look at them, they have all these transfer pieces coming in. I like their transfer roster, but they started the season 3-0. They beat a Monmouth team who went into West Virginia, and they beat the Mountaineers. They dominated Austin Peay, who could be really good this year. They have a whole bunch of transfer pieces coming in too. And they snapped Cornell's 23-game non-conference winning streak against non-Big Ten and ACC schools. For them to do that, new head coach, moving pieces coming in, that's really impressive. I think that's a team that could be competing for the top 4 in the A-10 and get that double bye. Duquesne's another one of them. They did lose to Princeton on Wednesday night, but there was all this talk over the offseason. Are they going to be able to be better? Are they going to continue growing? They have so much depth in the front court, and they have some really good guards, and they've shown it so far. That Princeton team they lost to is another one that's really caught my eye so far. They won again on Saturday. I believe that moves them to 4-0 on the season. They won a neutral site game against Rutgers, and that was pretty much all Rutgers fans. They beat Hofstra, who won a game in the postseason last year. They beat Duquesne, as I mentioned. Monmouth, they absolutely dominated. That one in the West Virginia, they beat the Mountaineers. I've been super impressed by that Princeton program. I thought they'd maybe take a little bit of a step down, losing Tosan and Wabon this year, but they've proved me wrong, and they've had a really strong start to the season. UNCW, that win against UNC Asheville last weekend, was super impressive. They dominated them from the opening tip. I was not expecting them to make it such a blowout, especially on the road, but they were able to do that, and that was super impressive. Out in Myrtle Beach, you have Liberty, who's had a really strong start to the Conference USA season. I thought they'd be up there towards the top. Everyone always thinks they're going to be really good. I believe they started around 65, 68 in Ken Palm this year. But I thought maybe losing Darius McGee, take a little step down. They're still going to win 20 games every year. But they beat Charlotte pretty handily. They beat Furman by 14. They dominated Wichita. They beat a Vermont team that beat Charleston, beat St. Louis. They open against a good Merrimack squad, and they have a chance to be up there, once again, maybe top 25 mid-major team in the country. You know, they're always going to be up there towards the top of the America East, but people kind of disrespect them. They don't think they're up there with the big boys of the mid-major world. John Becker just continues to get it done, and I think he's going to do it again this season. And keep an eye out for the Catamounts to make some more noise, because they have a tough schedule, but if they win, they could be potentially competing for an at-large bid. If everything goes right, they could be up and having a season like they've had in the America East in the past, absolutely roll through it, and have some signature wins if they are able to beat Yale, Colgate, Virginia Tech, Toledo, and Bradley coming up.
And how much do you think it helps a team like a Vermont that you also have a team in UMass Lowell that has really impressed me? Yeah. They were close but no cigar against Arizona State. They go on the road, they knock off Georgia Tech. They were a rock-solid team a season ago, and I look at them this year, they're looking even better. You had Bryant, as you were alluding to a little bit earlier on Saturday, knock off Florida Atlantic. I think it would still be very far-fetched for a team from the America East to be a two-bid league, but at the same time, I take a look at this America East, and I have been very impressed by a lot of these teams.
Yeah, you look at UMass Lowell's schedule. I mentioned it before the Arizona State game, and I probably shouldn't have because I jinxed them in a way. They were dominating early on in this Arizona State game. They had it in the bag, and they absolutely choked that lead. But you look at this schedule, and outside of Vermont, and they play UMass, who they beat last year, they really don't have a tough schedule. So they could end up finishing the season with a handful of losses. That win for Vermont, if Vermont's able to beat them in conference play, could be a quad 1, quad 2 win. You have Bryant, who they're going to be maybe top 200. They won't be world beaters, but that'll be a good win, and that net's going to raise up because they beat FAU, who's going to have a great season. I can't really look at it, one result and say FAU is bad, but you got them. You have Maine, who should be really good this year. Maine beat Presbyterian 2 nights ago. They did lose on Saturday to North Florida, but Maine should be good this year. Binghamton should be good this year. The America East is in a much better position than I thought it would be. That's more because I'm a UMBC guy, and I didn't really think all that highly of the team this year, but Vermont, Lowell, Bryant, Maine, Binghamton, even UNH, who has Clarence Daniels. It's a really, really solid league this year. Was not expecting that with the America East, and I'm excited to see what goes on over these next couple months.
I am as well. As Nick Lorensen, who does such a good job over at Mid-Major Madness, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And as we know, it is very much a small sample size. Most of the teams that we're talking about right now, they played right around 4 or so games. You might have a straight team or two that has played 5. You might have a team that's been a little bit slower out of the gate with more like 3, but how much do you take a look at the early part of the season and put stock into a team, or do you need to see a little bit more before you decide, all right, I was just too low / too high on a team in general? Because I do think that while we get excited about all these results, at the same time, we do have to recognize that sometimes, like in the case of Florida Atlantic especially, goal shooting nights happen, and then in the case of a team like James Madison coming back from down 2 possessions with 4 seconds remaining against Kent State, just crazy outliers do as well.
Yeah, Greg, you hit a hot button topic here. So every week I put out my mid-major top 25, and people love to overreact to it, but even more so early on in the season. And it makes me annoyed. I hate doing polls early on in the season because I like to put what I think of the team early on. I like to keep them in that. I had Loyola in my top 25. Loyola had a bad week. They're going to get out of that. But early on in the season, honestly, I just try to push my narrative of what I think. I don't read too much stock into what's happening. But when Feast Week hits, this upcoming week we have, everything's different. Everything changes during Feast Week. I feel like we start to know who are the big dogs, who's for real. I mean, we get a little bit of an appetizer with it with Charleston and Myrtle Beach, those 2 tournaments. But when this week hits, we really see what these teams are made of. You can be strong in January, February, but if you want to work on a resume, this is the week you work on a resume because you're at a neutral site. You have a chance to play some good programs. This is the biggest week of the season, in my opinion. After this week is when I really put stock into teams.
Yep, I do think that now we're starting to get to know these teams a little bit more, and what we see, I would say, after November 31st, then you're really able to get a good lay of the land with these teams. And with regards to what we are going to be seeing this week, as we're recording this for Tuesday, so we're doing this as the Maui Invitational is just getting going. We're doing this as we're going to be seeing the Battle for Atlantis this week as well. Is there a few events, is there a few teams in general that you do have your eye on as to teams that you think might be able to ascend / decline based on how they do this week?
Maui's a great tournament. You have Tennessee, Syracuse. It's going to be interesting to see what Syracuse does here because they've started the season 3-0. They had that great comeback win against Colgate, but they really haven't played all that much, and they've played teams close. It's going to be interesting to see what Autry can do early on in his tenure at Syracuse. The SoCal Challenge kind of has a sneaky good field for a mid-major tournament. Sacramento State, we're going to see if that team can compete towards the top of the Big Sky. Austin P. Tarleton's always up there in the WAC. Austin P. could be a breakout team in the A-Sun this season with all their transfer pieces. Cayman Islands has a really good field with Oakland and Drake. Oakland's been really impressive to me early on. I know they played Power 5 programs in the first week. They lost to both of them. But they were tight games. They were tight games for a large majority of it. I think they only lost by a dozen. But they play a Drake team who's one of the best in mid-major basketball. They have one of the best players in mid-major basketball. Marshall plays Utah State in that tournament. I was impressed with Marshall when Queens played them on opening night. And Utah State has a whole bunch of transfer pieces coming in. They're starting to click. They're starting to adapt together. This could be a real opportunity to turn some heads and move up there towards the top. Sunshine Slam. Everyone's going to look at the top bracket with Colorado and Florida State, but I'm interested in the bottom half where you have a Siena team that has some moving pieces. People think they could still maybe compete in the MAC, and they have Milwaukee in that tournament too. Some people say that they're going to be at the top of the Horizon League, but I think that everyone should keep an eye on them to be at the top of the Horizon League. They have one of the best players in mid-major basketball with B.J. Freeman. He can just absolutely take over games at times. Battle for Atlantis, of course, is going to be a great field. You have UNC, UNI. I think UNI has a chance to win maybe a game or two in this tournament because they have experience. They have some young studs like Bowen, Borden, Titan Anderson who can do some things for them. Villanova plays Texas Tech in that. Villanova is looking to build off a great win against Maryland on Friday night. Michigan, Memphis. Michigan's coming off a tough loss, but they've looked really solid this year. Memphis, their fans think everyone's sleeping on them for whatever reason. I don't think anyone's sleeping on them. They're a fringe top 25 team, and they've got a good squad. They have a chance to make a statement there. And then Arkansas is trying to bounce back off of a loss against UNCG, and they open against Stanford. Very, very winnable game. You also have the ESPN Events Invitational down there in Lake Buena Vista. Florida Atlantic hopefully being able to bounce off this loss against Bryan on Saturday night. Everyone's thinking the world's falling and this FAU team sucks. They have opportunities. After they play Butler, they play either Penn State or Texas A&M. That's a Power 5 opportunity. In their final game, they can play a Boise State team that should be in the top 40 of the country coming at the end of the year, one of the best defensive teams in the country. VCU, who has a whole bunch of guard pieces, who I think is going to continue getting better. I know they've been playing teams close, but I think Ryan Odom will have them continuing to grow. You also have the mid-major tournament I'm excited about, the Baja Mar Nassau Championship. Brown, Keno Lilly has a chance to do something there. Ohio, A.J. Brown has a chance to do something there. GW, James Bishop. There's a whole bunch of star players in this. Delaware, Middle Tennessee was a little bit banged up, but they have a good squad. UNCG, who's coming off that win against Arkansas. That's a really, really good mid-major tournament with maybe 4 NCAA tournament teams, and then a Delaware and GW team that should be up there towards the top of their league. And then the Emerald Coast, Santa Clara, to see if they can really cement themselves up there towards the top of the WCC. They play Oregon in their opening game, and then they'll play either Alabama or Ohio State. So they have a chance to grow. There's a lot of really, really fun tournaments. Those are just a handful. Your schedule will be loaded with college basketball from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. It's the best time of the year. I love March, but when you have this in November, nonstop basketball, it's the absolute best. And you have turkey and you have football and everything's right in the world.
Absolutely. You're able to load up your plate with a bunch of meat, whether you eat turkey or ham. I personally am more of a turkey fan when it comes to Thanksgiving, but there are those that enjoy ham, and whatever you enjoy in terms of your meat, you get that with just whatever you enjoy in terms of college basketball. You're able to get 12-plus hours a day every day for the next week or so. And Nick, I know you are here for it. You're doing a great job over at Mid-Major Madness, doing great work over at Queens NC as they're looking to build upon being one of the newest D1 programs in all of college basketball as well. So let the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, over at Mid-Major Madness, Mid_Madness on Twitter. I'll be continuing to tweet about college basketball every night. As I'm working at Queens, we have a game against Drexel on Sunday. We're doing this on Saturday, so we have Drexel on Sunday. Then we play FDU, who's looked really good this season, on Wednesday. So that'll be a lot of fun. You can follow over at Mid_Madness, like I mentioned, or N Lorensen Sports, NLORENSCN Sports on Twitter to see what I'm up to. Absolutely.
And Nick doing a tremendous job taking a look at this game that we all know and love and doing some great work over at Queens. So a big thanks to Nick for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. We're back to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Gibbs Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure getting Nick Lorensen aboard. He does a tremendous job over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this great game. I know that he's had some involvement with the Queens NC basketball team as well, so always nice to be able to get that insight. He's able to see some of these teams up close and in person and from a little bit more of a coach's perspective as well. So always great to be able to get Nick aboard. Big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_D1. We're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order, which typically it's in time order with the big conferences and then the little conferences are at the bottom. But with conference tournaments right now, you have a few random games up top, and then it's pretty much in order by tip time with these non-conference tournaments. Like, I believe that we get the Gulf Coast Showcase first, and then Cayman Islands. You get from there, like the Sunshine Slam, Maui Invitational, and you just go down the list. So let's get things started with 601, 602 on the betting board. It is UNC Wilmington, and they are going to be playing against Appalachian State. This is at Suncoast Credit Arena, and with NC Wilmington, they are a 3.5 point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 141.5. I made Appalachian State the 2-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to dive in on App State outright on the money line. With the NC Wilmington team, they bring back quite a bit from a season ago, but I'm not necessarily sold on them. They have been one of the more fortunate teams in all of college basketball over the last few seasons. You've got Tarzarian White, who's going to be able to do a solid job down low. He entering into yesterday was logging right around about 19 points. He's been able to do a good job hauling in there, 4.5, 5 rebounds per contest. Has worked on his range after last season, was only shooting about 28% from 3-point range, but I think that Donovan Gregory can do a solid job down low as well. He's only 6'3", but he does a good job of being able to pull in their rebounds. He's had at least 4 boards in each out of his last 3 seasons. Right now, he's been able to do a nice job giving the team about 14 points, 2.5 assists. Currently shooting 50% from 3-point range. We'll see a little bit of fall off there. And the best shot blocker in this game does belong to App State. Justin Abson, who a season ago was able to give the team 2.2 blocks per contest. He's right now giving the team 4 blocks per contest. In that game against Oregon State, had 6 of them. And now you've got a little bit more of a coming together piece in the backcourt for this App State team as well. Xavion Brown has become a really good facilitator for this bunch. Last year had about 2.5 assists per contest. Right now, he's averaging 1.3 points per game, but also 4.7 assists per contest. He's doing a great job getting everyone in line. Both of these teams have their issues in terms of 3-point shooting. KJ Jenkins coming in from New Mexico certainly helps out this Wilmington team, as he last season shot north of 40% from 3, and Nick Farrar, throughout his career, has been about a 42% 3-point shooter himself, but not necessarily a primary scorer. He's 6'7", a little bit of a wing player. Malik Harden-Hayes, Shaquem Phillips, these are a pair of guys giving you between about 11 to 12 points per contest, so the backcourt depth does lean a little bit more to UNC Wilmington, but in terms of Appalachian State and their overall size, having someone like CJ Hundley, who's 6'10", is able to pop some threes, is able to do a good job on glass, I think that is going to be the difference maker. You have more size with App State. You have a little bit more backcourt play with UNC Wilmington, and I do think that App State finds a way to be able to get it done. I'm going to be taking a look at App State outright on the money line in this game from the great state of Florida, and set by total 136. Both of these teams perennially 2 of the slowest in all of college basketball. So taking a look at the under and App State outright on the money line. 603, 604 on the betting board. Georgia Southern and Northeastern do battle. Northeastern is a favorite of 4.5 points. Your total on this game is 142.5, and with Georgia Southern, I set them as an underdog of 1.5 points. Don't want them outright on the money line, but I am going to be willing to dive in on the points. I'm just not very bullish on this Northeastern team. With Northeastern, they just always feel very sporadic, and they probably are going to have the best rebounder in this game, and Chris Doherty, who's come over from Notre Dame, has been able to give the team the neighborhood about 8.5 rebounds per game, 9.5 points, but with Georgia Southern, they have someone in Carlos Curry that I think is going to be able to bust out. He last season was able to give the team 7.7 boards per contest. For some reason, just hadn't seen a lot of playing time going into yesterday. I'm wondering if there was like an injury that went under the radar or something like that. But you also have Malik Tidwell. He comes in from the non-Division I level, was a good sharpshooter at that level, and he's been able to give the team right around 9 points per contest. And you've got the Dean and Mr. Dean, as he's been able to do a very solid job coming over from Hampton, has become this team's primary scorer, doing a solid job of being able to give this team a few assists per contest. This last year at Hampton, he was able to give out right in the neighborhood of about 4.5 assists per contest, so I think that he's going to be a nice difference maker for this team. And then under the radar, now you've got Tyron Moore being able to give you more. He missed the first few games of the season. He's back in the fold, and he's been able to give you about, throughout his career, 33-34% 3-point shooting while doling out the ball, so I do think that for Georgia Southern, they do have the depth to be able to hold in this game. Got a Northeastern team that has Joe Pridgeon, who I still remember as a freshman in the Patriot League 2019-20 season, was logging like 17 points, 6.5 boards, shot it very well from 3-point range, but Northeastern is all over the place with regards to their outside shooting. They really don't try to dive inside. That limits their ability to be able to get to the free throw line. They only shoot 67% when they get to the free throw line, so while I do think that Northeastern is a better team, I just don't think that they're going to be able to win by margin, and if this comes down to late game fouls, they might blow the cover at the free throw line. So we'll take 4.5 Georgia Southern, set them as a 1.5 point underdog, and maybe by total 135.5. Both of these teams typically in the bottom 100 in terms of total possessions per game, but both of these teams certainly having their shooting woes, with Georgia Southern shooting under 30% from 3-point range going into yesterday. So diving in on the under, and going to be diving in with the points with Georgia Southern. 605, 606 on the betting board. Louisiana Tech and Southern Utah do battle. Louisiana Tech, a true home game for them, and they're 12.5 to 13.5 point favorites. And your total on this game going to be fighting it anywhere between 148.5 and 149.5. I set this line at 11. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Southern Utah. It certainly is a new dawn and a new day for Southern Utah. They now have Rob Jeter as their coach after he did a solid job at Western Illinois. I'm not going to say it was an amazing job or anything like that, but you know what? He was getting the job done. And for Southern Utah, what I think is just so paramount for the team is being able to have someone help out Prophet Johnson, who has come in and has been very good for the team, living up to his name. Non-Division I transfer that has been able to log 16 points, right around 5 boards per contest. But Zion Young, who began his career playing for Rob Jeter over at Western Illinois, he, a few seasons ago, 2018-20 season, while at Western Illinois, was a 41% three-point shooter with 13 points per game. Ever since then, it's been a downward spiral, but it feels like getting back with Jeter has been good for him. He's had 39 points in the first 3 games of the season, so is a relatively solid three-point shooter with a little bit of size. Now, for Southern Utah, overall size, it's very much lacking with this team, though. You do have a lot of guys like a Chaz Hutchinson, who's able to give you 5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get about 4.5 boards out of Parsa Fiala as well. So you do have balanced rebounding. You don't necessarily have that dominant rebounder like Louisiana Tech has had with Trayvon Magnum, who at 6'8" is able to give you 8 boards per contest and his career high 33-point shooter. And now you do have to monitor the fact that Daniel Bacho is back out there on the floor for Louisiana Tech as well. Was denied a 2-time waiver to begin the season, but he became eligible late last week in his debut. Had 12 points, 4 boards in 25 minutes against Louisiana Monroe. So he's going to help the team win the battle down low. But I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression with Jalen Henderson and what he's been able to provide for his Louisiana Tech team. Currently shooting 53.5% from 3, 93% at the free throw line with 17 points per contest. He's a good shooter. I like what he's able to bring to the table. He's not that quite good of a shooter, and with Talik Chavez, he's a relatively solid scorer as well, but I do think that for Southern Utah, they're going to be able to do a solid job of being able to hold in this game. They've had no problem scoring points. The problem for them has been defense. Meanwhile, Louisiana Tech, other than that game against Colorado State, been a pretty solid defensive team. Offense, a little bit of a work in progress. Sans Henderson shooting all those 3. So I did set my total at a 149. We're between a 148.5 and a 149.5. Personally, I would lean towards a 148.5 over with the way that fouls have been called in college basketball. So going to be looking at that opener of 148.5 over, and I'm willing to take the points with Southern Utah. Made them an 11-point underdog. 607, 608 on the betting board. Indiana State and Rice to battle from Henderson, Las Vegas. As Rice, we give our Lane Kiffin. Go Owls, our 5-point underdog. So on this game, it's 159. I said Rice as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line. This Rice bunch has, in my opinion, a guy that this Indiana State team is not going to be able to match up with, and that'd be Max Fiedler, who a season ago at 6'11", led the team in assists. He was able to give them right around 10 points, 9 boards, 5 assists. He's just a stat sheet sufferer, and they are going to have to match up with Isaiah Swope. Isaiah Swope, someone that comes in from Southern Indiana, was a really good 3-point shooter a season ago. He was able to log about 15.5 points, shot in the neighborhood about 42% from 3-point range, and right now he's shooting 59% from 3. That should be coming down a little bit, so versatility is big with Indiana State. They don't necessarily have that true low post player. They've got Jason Kent, who at 6'8" is able to give you 13 points, 6 boards per contest. So I think that bodes well for Fiedler. Now, the backcourt might not be as versatile with Quincy Oliveri being out of the fold, and for Indiana State, you've got Xavier Bledson. He's never been a primary scorer, averaged 6.5 points per contest a season ago, but he's done a good job doling it out this season. 6.7 assists, not shooting it well from 3 right now, but throughout his career, more of a 36% 3-point shooter for an Indiana State team that currently is shooting 40.5% from 3 and 63.5% at the charity stripe. I do think that we're going to see that iron out a little bit. Indiana State was really good at the free throw line a season ago, and a mid-tier 3-point shooting team. I think that elevates a little bit with Isaiah Swope, but not to this extent. You've also had Robbie Avila be in and out of the fold for Indiana State as well. He was able to get out there in their game against IUPUI most recently, so should be good to go. But with Rice, I do think that they're going to be able to get enough out of this backcourt. Travis Evie has been a double-figure scorer each of the last 3 years for the team, high 33-point shooter. And then you bring in Sam Aljiki, who was over at Cal a season ago, was a part-time starter in the Pac-12. Now, granted, it was Cal, but still, shot about 36% from 3 as a 6'7", a little bit of a combo player. I think that the versatility and the fact that Rice is going to be able to win the battle on the glass allows them to be able to take this game, and I do think that we see a bit of regression with this Indiana State 3-point shooting, especially in a neutral court environment out here at the Dollar Loan Center. So it is a spot where I did set my line at Rice being a 1.5 point favorite, taking them out right on the money line, and with my total set it at a 155.5, so diving under. 609, 610 on the betting board. Campbell is going to be playing host to Idaho St. Idaho St is an underdog of 4 points, and your total is 126.5. I did have to shade down this total after what we saw yesterday. I went from this total being a 134 to a 130. I still like it over. I still think we're maybe overreacting a little bit, but that was a rough first half that we saw from Idaho State, so some small adjustments had to be made. It was a 23-13 first half in which Idaho State won, and then they lose the game outright after you see an explosion in the second half, and I certainly do think Idaho State is better than what they showed in the game yesterday. That was just a rough display, to say the least. But what I think is big for Idaho State is they're going to need to do a good job on the glass, because you do have someone I like in Braden Parker who's been able to give this team about 6 boards, a little bit over 10 points per contest, and at 6'8", he's able to pop a few threes. They go up against a Campbell team that, without Josiah Lucane, you can tell that they're in a little bit of transition. They have been having a lot of moving pieces from a team which prides itself on the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, but now they've had to become a one-man band with Anthony De La Rosa being the primary scorer for the team going into yesterday, shooting about 45.5% from 3, 18.7 boards per contest. But where's the help going to be coming from, especially with J. Pal now being over at San Diego State? You really don't have anyone other than De La Rosa who's been able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. You've got Jetty Makosakis, who's been able to give you about 8.5 points per contest, but that is about it. Now, Campbell, bit better with their defense, in my opinion, than Idaho State. You do have Miguel Tambly, though, who for Idaho State has been able to give you about 13 points per contest. Idaho State entered into yesterday shooting 40% from 3. That took a nosedive after what we saw yesterday, and I do think that we're going to see further regression there, but I do think that we've went a little bit too low with this total. I set mine at 130. I'm going to be taking a look at the over with Campbell. They entered into yesterday shooting 26% from 3-point range. I think that's going to be going northward, and with Campbell not forcing a lot of steals, that should allow for some clean possessions. And with regards to the side, I've got my number at 4 as well, so I'm going to be waiting on a little bit of an early AM move. DraftKings is currently the only book with a number up, so we should be seeing different numbers as the night goes along. 3.5 or less going to be willing to lay with Campbell. 4.5 or more. Looking at Idaho State to go along with the over. 6'11", 6'12 on the betting board. It is UW Green Bay and UC Riverside doing battle, and Riverside is a neutral court 6.5 point favorite. And your total on this game, it is 133. And with this UW Green Bay team, did have to set them as an underdog here, and I landed on a number of 6.5 as well. So this is a little bit of a wait-and-see mode for me. 7 or more, going to be willing to take the points with Green Bay. Feels like a football situation, and 6 or less going to be willing to lay with UC Riverside. We did see an opener in a few spots of UC Riverside being a 6-point favorite, and personally, I'd probably rather lay 6 and take 7 with UC Riverside, even though UW Green Bay is actually going to have the best player in this game. The best player in this game is Noah Reynolds, and he has been absolutely tremendous for UW Green Bay. Going into yesterday, the transfer from Wyoming, 20.3 points, 4.7 boards, 4.7 assists, now only shooting 11% from 3-point range. That should be going northward. He has absolutely no help whatsoever. Foster Wonders, who couldn't get out there for Southern Illinois a season ago, he's right now like their number 2 guard. You've got really 2 guys that are giving you north of 4.5 rebounds per contest. Elijah Jones has come in from the non-D1 level. He's been able to supply about 9 boards per contest. Marcus Hall is a freshman from Schofield, Wisconsin, who's been able to give you a few boards as well, but this is very much a bare-bones team. Now, it's not like this UC Riverside team is necessarily brimming with a lot of experience themselves, as they lose so much of their fulcrum from a season ago, especially Zion Pullen, but been able to get some good production out of Barrington Hargress, who's been able to give you about 12 points per contest. He, a season ago, was playing over in the high school area, was a relatively solid recruit out of the Inglewood area. You've got Will Tartsell along with Jalen Martinez, who have been both able to give you about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game as well, so they should be able to win that battle down low. And the question is, what are you going to be able to get out of the Incarnate Word transfer, as they've been able to get about 10.5 points per contest thus far out of Benjamin Briscretti, who's 6'11", offers a little bit of versatility. And then on top of that, you've got Kyle Owens, who's been dealing with some ups and downs over the last few seasons after he really tore it up over at Montana, was limited last year due to injury over at UC Riverside. He did, though, log about 10 points, 5.5 boards, shot below 30% from 3-point range, but at 6'8", offers versatility that I just don't think UW Green Bay matches up with. At 7 or more, taking the points with the Phoenix. At 6 or less, going to be willing to lay with UC Riverside, and did set my total at 132.5. Riverside, traditionally a pretty slow team that loses much of their scoring from last year, and UW Green Bay, entering into yesterday against Division I competition, had yet to break the 60-point plateau. 6-13, 6-14 on the betting board. It is LaSalle. They hit the road to face off against Duke. Duke is between a 24.5 and a 25-point favorite. Total is between 144 and 144.5, with Duke made them a 24-point favorite. Now that we're getting up to 25, I'm going to be willing to take the points with LaSalle, and opener was also 24 as well. So seems like the books said the same number as myself, and now that we're seeing people buy in on Duke, that is a buy point on LaSalle. This LaSalle team is far from amazing, but they do have a few pieces in the backcourt that I like. Khalil Brantley, along with Jabari Breakus. These guys have been able to log a combined about 31.5 points per contest. Breakus has been able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. It does a good job of being able to dole out the ball. Between these two guys, you have been able to get north of 7 assists per contest, and then you got someone like an Anwar Gill who's been very crafty. He's been able to give up 5 assists, 11 points per contest. Not a primary scorer, but just a guy that makes winning plays, but you just really have nothing down low. You've got Rokas Josias, who comes in from Lithuania, has been able to give you about 5 boards per contest, and he stands no chance against Kyle Filipowski. The 7-footer is able to pop some threes. He's been very versatile, doing a great job of being able to pound the glass. He's now a little bit of a better rim protector, in my opinion, this year as well, with a little bit over a block per contest. Duke is also going to be able to throw out them Mike Mitchell, who's been able to give you 14 points, 5 boards. Overall, Duke shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. You've got great versatility and you've got great size overall with this team, along with athleticism. And you also have Tyrese Proctor, who's done a good job as a main floor general, giving out the ball. 5.8 assists and 1 turnover per contest. Would like to see the scoring pop get up there a little bit. That's why a lot of people did hype him up as a preseason All-American. But you've got so many guys like a Jeremy Roach, a Jared McCain that's able to help him out in the backcourt. But I do think that with LaSalle, having wily veteran guards, that's going to be able to hold them snug in this game. And LaSalle's been relatively solid on the defensive side of things as well. Duke certainly has been. Sans that game against Arizona, they've held all their opponents to 65 points or fewer. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a slog. We have seen it with John Shire ever since he has gotten to Duke. He's really had his teams preaching defense. So it is a circumstance where I did set my total 142 diving under, and anything north of 24 going to be willing to take the points with LaSalle. 6-15, 6-16 on the bang board. It is Detroit. They play UC Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan, an underdog of 2.5 points. 142 to 143.5 is your total. I did set Detroit as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is really not a vote of confidence on Detroit, as they have been one of the least efficient defenses in all of college basketball the last few seasons, but a defense that has been even less efficient is Eastern Michigan. Now, good news for Eastern Michigan. They're coming off of winning 2 out of their last 3 games. They were able to win at home against Cleveland State and Georgia Southern, and those are quality wins. In their 2 losses, though, they have lost by 39 points and 43 points. You really have an all-or-nothing Eastern Michigan team here with Ty Acuff, who transferred in from Duquesne a few seasons ago. Really the only guy that's putting the ball in the basket. He's not shooting it well from three-point range, but he's been able to give the team 20 points, a steal, 4 rebounds per contest, and part of the reason why you just can't take Eastern Michigan here, they have no rebounding whatsoever. Right now, Julius Ellerby, the guy that comes up from the non-Division I level, has been able to give the team 5 boards. He has a little bit of versatility, but you really don't have any sort of post play whatsoever with this team. You really don't have a lot of three-point shooting. The team is turning the ball over 14.5 times per game because they really don't have a point guard. And for Detroit, at the very least, you've got a trigger man, and that would be Jaden Stone. Jaden Stone, before going down with an injury last year, was shooting 52% for 3 with 14 points per contest through 13 games thus far this season. 18.5 points, 6 boards, not quite shooting 51.5% from three-point range, but at 34%, that'll fly. You also have Donovan Totley, who I still remember, he absolutely tore it up during the 2018-19 season at Chattanooga, then fell off the face of planet Earth the last few years. He has resurfaced, and he's been a nice find for this team with 15.5 points per contest, but what has always plagued Totley has been injuries. He has been in and out of the fold throughout the season, so do want to be monitoring his status. But you've also got Otan Jankovic, who down low is a 6'10" gentleman that is able to give you a little bit of size. He too has been just robbed by injuries as well, so that's another guy that you want to check in on his status. But the man that has been just the rock for this team down low, that would be Eduardo Del Cadilla, who began his career at UNLV and Nichols, and in his 4 games, he's really taken over down low. A little bit over a steal, 11.5 points, 6.5 boards, able to shoot 37.5% from 3 as a 6'8" versatile gentleman from Turkey. You've got Detroit dealing with a few injuries, but an Eastern Michigan team without a point guard, without any sort of rebounding whatsoever, that's something I want absolutely no part of. So that is why I did set Detroit as a 5.5 point favorite, and I made my total 151.5 fully recognize that this is an Eastern Michigan offense that is inefficient. Both of these defenses are just absolutely putrid, though, on both of these teams. You've got them playing various styles. Detroit is a little bit more of a slow team. Eastern Michigan looking to push tempo a little bit more. So, going to take the over, and I'm going to take Detroit laying the number. 6-17, 6-18 on the betting board. UAB is on the road facing off against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is between a 1.5 point favorite and a 1 point underdog. Your total between 139.5 and 140.5. With this Middle Tennessee team. Maybe I'm just a hater, but I'm just not buying in. I set UAB as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be taking them outright on the money line. UAB is a team in quite a bit of transition, but I like the pieces that they brought in from the non-Division I level to pair with Eric Gaines. Eric Gaines is your main scorer returning from a season ago. He has been able to do a nice job taking over the reins this year with 17 points and 3.3 steals per contest. And then the other guy that returns from last year, Javion Davis, 2.3 steals per contest. So UAB, still with very active hands, doing a good job of being able to take away the ball. Their three-point shooting without Jelly Walker has certainly diminished. They're only shooting about 29% from three-point range, but I do think that they're going to get quite a bit moving forward out of their two main junior college transfers. Alejandro Vasquez comes in after he actually began his career at St. Bonaventure, where he wasn't any sort of an amazing player, but you know what? He was able to give the team that season like 6 points per contest, went down to the non-D1 level, and at 6'4", became a little bit more of a complete, versatile player. Still not someone that's going to be doling out the ball too much, but has been a nice impact scorer with 13 points per contest, and then you're able to get right around 5 points, 5 boards out of Yaxel Lenborg. Someone who at 6'9" is capable of shooting threes. Has not really shown that. He's been utilized a little bit more in the post, and he's been able to give the team a little bit of rough and tumble after they lost Trey Jemison from a season ago. Meanwhile, for Middle Tennessee, they do lose pretty much 3 out of their top 5 scorers from a season ago, and it has hurt the team quite a bit. You do have Cameron Weston. He's been able to give the team 11 points per contest. Been inconsistent with his 3-point shot, and he's been dealing with injury. He might not be able to suit up for this one, as he's missed each of the last 2 games, and even if he does go, might not be 100%. That's left the onus on Elias King to really be able to take things over after he shot about 40% from 3-point range a season ago. He's been able to do it all this far. 15.5 points, shooting 48% from 3. We should see a fall off there for a Middle Tennessee team that has had their issues from 3-point range, and they're having a tough time taking care of the ball in general. They have had about 14 turnovers per contest. They really have only one true rebounder, and Jared Coleman Jones, who's at 6'10", able to give you in the neighborhood about 8 rebounds per contest. But with Middle Tennessee last year, they were able to swarm. They were able to get those steals. They're not doing quite as much of that this season. And for UAB, their offensive numbers are just a little bit dwarfed by the fact that they played against Bradley and Maryland, 2 very slow teams to begin the season. So I do think that UAB going to be able to get out there. They are going to be able to run it on a Middle Tennessee team that they themselves just aren't the same on defense as they were a season ago. So I did set my total at 143. Looking at the over with UAB, I think they go into Murfreesboro and they get the win. I'm taking UAB outright on the money line, set them as a 3-point favorite, and looking at the over. 619, 620 on the betting board. Valparaiso is going to be playing us to Western Illinois. Western Illinois is an underdog of between 2 and 2.5 points, and your totals between 137.5 and 138.5. With Valpo, I set them as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm actually going to be willing to take 2 to 2.5 without taking the money line of Western Illinois. I just really think that this is very much a toss-up game here. You got a Valparaiso team that very nearly lost to UW Green Bay on their own floor, and then they gave a spirited first-half effort against Illinois before they got lambasted in the second half. And for Western Illinois, it's a new coaching regime as Rob Jeter leaves, and I like what they've been able to get out of James Dent Jr. He's been able to log 18 points, 5 boards, shooting 40% from 3-point range after being at the non-Division I level a season ago, but what are you going to be able to get out of everyone else? This is a very questionable backcourt. You've got someone like Ryan Myers, who he's another guy that comes in after he, a few seasons ago, was over at Iona and wasn't a bad player at Iona. It's a career about 37% 3-point shooter. He might be a little bit of an elevator for the team, but what I think is so key for Western Illinois, Josiah West getting going down low, because he's been good on the glass. He's been able to give the team 7 boards per contest. Scoring is right around about 5 points per game, and for Valparaiso, they're really just looking for main pieces in general to be able to feature, because last year it was Kobe King and it was Ben Krikke who combined for about 35 points per contest. They've really looked to Isaiah Stafford thus far, who's been able to log 20 points per game, shooting 42% from 3. He's coming from the non-D1 level, and he has been tremendous. I've got question marks as to whether or not that is going to be long-lasting. Cooper Schweiger, who he's a true freshman at 6'9". He's been able to lend a little bit of versatility as well with about 10 points per contest, with Jerome Palm being your main rebounder. Past Palm and Jackson Edwards, who comes in from Murray State, though, you really don't have a lot of size down low, and I really thought we were going to see the coming of age of Darius DiViero, who a season ago was able to give you nearly 3 assists. Never has been a scorer, but was able to give you north of a steal per contest. Once again, I mean, he's doing a fine job giving out 4 assists to 1.5 turnovers per game, 1.8 points per game. You don't need your point guard to be going off for 20 points, but you need a little bit of a threat on offense. And Valparaiso is right now just completely lacking that. It is also a situation of something's got to give. Valparaiso has been rough on offense, but they've also been getting torched on defense when they played against actual competition. They allowed fewer than 70 points IUPUI and UW Green Bay. I think that's a product of the competition that they're playing. Meanwhile, for this Western Illinois team, against D1 competition, they have given up at least 78 points in every one of their games this year. So something's got to give. I think that this is a game that is going to be involving a lot of late game fouling, and I do think that things are going to be a little bit more up-tempo. Valparaiso's numbers are dwarfed by the schedule that they have played. So looking at the overset, my total 145.5, and with Valpo, made them a 1.5 point favorite, so we'll take 2+ here with Western Illinois. 621, 622 on the betting board. It is Pepperdine, and they're going to be playing against UC Irvine. UC Irvine is a favorite of between 5.5 and 6.5 points, and total on this game is taken between 148 and 149.5. This is another game from the Dollar Loan Center out here in Henderson, Nevada, and with UC Irvine, set them at 7-point favorites. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. With UC Irvine, they are going to be able to dominate the battle down low. You've got Ben Lutken, who at 7'1", he's able to pop threes. He's got really good versatility. He's able to offer 6+ rebounds per game, and I think that that's going to be tough for Pepperdine to be able to match up with, because with Pepperdine, this is a team that's right now dealing with a bunch of injuries, and that's not terrific. We have not seen Javon Porter all season long. I am just assuming him out until further notice, so that's been an issue. You were expecting perhaps a little bit out of John Squire. I believe that his brother was playing for Cal State Fullerton. He has given you a big, giant nothing burger thus far. Now, Ethan Anderson was actually a very good player at USC. For USC, he was pretty much a starter for 2.5 years. You had Wyoming pick him up last season, and just wasn't necessarily a fit with that system. But you go back to his freshman year at USC, he was giving out 4 assists per contest, did a solid job shooting 38% from 3-point range, and this season he's got 3.6 assists and 3.4 turnovers per game. Feels like he's actually gotten worse as his college basketball career has went along. Now, you've got a good primary scorer with this Pepperdine team. Houston Mallett is be able to give you 20 points per contest, shooting 48% from 3, and he's a good 3-point shooter. He's not 48% good, and Pepperdine as a whole shooting 37% from 3, 77% the charity stripe, but also 14 turnovers per contest. And this UC Irvine team, they are playing much more up-tempo than they did even just a few seasons ago, but they're masters of efficiency. They're getting 8 steals per contest. They're only turning it over 11 times per game, and they've got the more sure-handed point guard in Pierre Cockrell, who doesn't score much, 5.5 points per contest, but 6.3 assists and 2 turnovers per contest. And when he needs to shoot threes throughout his career, he's been able to do so. 2 years ago, he's actually a 37% 3-point shooter. Devin Tills is someone who at 6'6", is able to pop some threes. He's able to give you 11 points per contest. I love what you've been able to get out of Andre 3000 Henry. He's come in after being a nice reserve for the team a season ago, and he's become a primary scorer with 13 points per contest. You've got all sorts of size that should be able to just absolutely road grade this Pepperdine team, especially with them dealing with the Porter injury. And for UC Irvine, they are a team that's playing a little bit more up-tempo than in the past, but they're still one of the toughest defenses to score on in all of college basketball. So I did set my line at 7. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Irvine. Did set my total at a 147 as well, so I'm going to be taking the under to go along with Irvine. Also out there at the Dollar Loan Center in Henderson, 623, 624 on the betting board. New Mexico and Toledo do battle. Toledo is an underdog of 3 to 3.5 points. Totals between 159.5 and 161. I've got this reverse. I said Toledo is a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line. With New Mexico, you just don't know if you're going to get Jalen House in this game, for one, and two, if you get Jalen House, if he's anywhere even close to 100%. I am sort of thinking that we're not going to be getting Jalen House in this game, and we've seen it with Jamal Mashburn Jr. When Jalen House is not out there on the floor, he's just not as effective as for Jamal Mashburn Jr. The last 2 games, he was very solid in that game against UT Arlington with 29 points, but against St. Mary's, he was held down to 7 points. He has been able to shoot about 45.5% from 3-point range, but he just doesn't do the little things that Jalen House does, and that's create some steals, be able to hit the glass a little bit more, give you a bit more facilitation, as the ball's really been in the hands of Donovan Dent. And Dent, he has been able to put a dent into some defenses, as far this season, 17 points, 5 assists, to about 2.3 turnovers per contest. And for New Mexico, even with out of the fold Mr. House, this team still does play quite a bit up-tempo. Nelly Jr. Joseph has been able to do a solid job down low as well, 8 points, 8 boards out of the gentleman from Iona. But I take a look at the Toledo team. Even though they lose a ton from a season ago, they do also get back one of the guys they thought they were going to feature last season in Tyler Cochran, who was limited to 9 games due to injury in those 9 games a season ago. 9 points, 4 boards, shot over 40% from 3-point range, and he's become a nice double-figure scorer for this team. He's been able to get a combined 6.5 assists per contest out of Dante Maddox along with Raheem Moss. Both of these guys have also been able to combine for about 29 points per game. In Toledo, they're just so efficient on offense. 9.3 turnovers per contest. They're shooting 44% from 3. Lions here, number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Also in the bottom 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Toledo, they're picking up right where they left off last year. 78-plus points in every one of their games thus far. They have given up 75-plus in 2 out of their 3. And for New Mexico, they've been pretty ghastly on defense the last 2 games. They only gave up 72 to St. Mary's, but it was a very slow-tempo game that wasn't necessarily too great for them. I think that this is going to be a run-it and to-gun-it type of game. And with Toledo, I think that they're going to be able to do a solid job down low. Nelly Jr. Joseph helps out this New Mexico team. But with House, even if he does play in this game, once again, I don't think he's going to be 100%. That's a difference maker for Toledo. Looking at Toledo outright on the money line, set my total at 165.5. So also looking at the over 625, 626 on the betting board. It is Northern Arizona, and they are going to be playing on the road against Hawaii. Rainbow Warriors are between 13 and 14-point underdogs. Your total on this game, you're going to be finding that anywhere between 139 and 140. Hawaii does look like they're going to be playing a bit faster this season. It's a very small sample size, but we did see them take it to Niagara a few nights ago. I did set my total low at a 136. This is a Northern Arizona team that always has been very inefficient on the defensive side of things. The offense is typically a little bit hit or miss with them as well, and they've been involved in some slugs as well. For Northern Arizona, 67 points or fewer in 4 of their first 5 games of the season, so I'm going to be one to dive under. But with Hawaii, I felt like they should have been closer to 16-point favorites. For one, the travel just gets to you, especially a team like Northern Arizona. They just played over the weekend quite a few games, so they're going to be a little bit pooped after this, in my opinion, and I just don't know how they match up down low with the likes of Bernardo da Silva and Justin McCoy. A pair of guys are currently combining for 13.5 rebounds per game. Hawaii is currently shooting 42% for 3. One of those games came against a non-Division I team, so I do take that very much with a grain of salt, but the fact that they were able to lay a 92 spot on a Niagara team that typically is very prideful on defense really does speak to me. Noah Coleman, he was a double-figure scorer last season that's picking up right where he left off this season. Jovan McClanahan, he's never really been a great 3-point shooter, but last year gave the team 3.5 assists per contest, plays solid defense, and got a Northern Arizona team that has been dealing with an injury to Carson Tout, and that has been big for them because he was really their top rebounder for a season ago, someone who I really thought was going to be able to elevate this team. With him out of the fold, this team has looked like a complete wreck down low. Now, they do bring the Pepperdine transfer in Carson Basham, who's been able to give you at 6'10", right around 8 points, 6 boards per contest, so you're able to get a little bit of something there, but still, you've got your question marks with Oakland Ford as well, who emerged in the Big Sky tournament, but really past that was a pedestrian player last year, shot 38% for 3 with 5 points per contest as a primary scorer, has not really been able to hold up his end of the bargain. And then Mo Sek, the 7'1" big man for Hawaii, doesn't necessarily score a lot, but you saw him in the post when he was given minutes. He's able to be a disruptor, and I think that for Northern Arizona, they get decimated on the glass. So I did set Hawaii as a 16-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and with regards to the total, set mine at a 136. So going in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay the points with Hawaii. 627, 628 on the betting board. This is a Gulf Coast showcase out there at Hertz Arena, as you've got yourself Iona, and they're going to be playing against Long Beach State. This is a game that is presently off the board, and In terms of this one, I did set Long Beach State as a 5.5 point favorite, and I made my total a 153.5. So 153 or less, going to be taking a look at the over, 154 or higher to the under, and Long Beach State, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 5 with them. Just a rough effort out of both of these teams yesterday, especially Long Beach State, scoring 52 points against Illinois State. This is a Long Beach State team that perennially runs it and guns it, and prior to yesterday, they really were doing that, and then they just dropped a big giant turd. There's no other way of putting it, so that was less than savory for Long Beach State, but I do think that the Traores are going to be able to take over in this game. Abubakar Traore is more of a 6'5" versatile guy that last year gave you about a double-figure amount of points, 8 boards, but he also gave you 3.5 assists, was able to do a nice job of being able to pop a few threes, and then Lassane Traore, he's a double-double machine with about 10 points, 10 boards, more of a back-to-the-basket big man. These two guys in tandem are very good, and you've got a nice primary scorer, Marcus Siones, scored just 5 points yesterday, and he is known for being a very feast or famine guy, but overall, he's been able to log between 18 and 19 points per contest for a Long Beach State team that entered yesterday shooting 35% from 3. Now, caution, they were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball a season ago, so I do think that water starting to find its level, and for Iona, this is clearly a team that's able to light it up from 3, going into yesterday against High Point, shooting just below 40% from 3-point range, but they are also a little bit of a work in progress, and the big thing for this team as well is that they had one guy return from a season ago, Osborne Chema. He has yet to hit the floor. That's a 7-footer that can really elevate what this Iona team is able to do down low, and without him in the fold, I just don't think that they stand any sort of shot whatsoever against the Traores. You only have one guy give you north of 4 rebounds in the game yesterday. That'd be Jeremiah Quigley, a 5'11" freshman that came in off the bench. So that's not necessarily a redeeming quality. You do have a little bit of size with Wiza Ponzo. He comes in from Stetson, where season ago shot 47% from 3-point range just far this season. Is averaging about 10 points per game. It's been a little bit off with this 3, but it's starting to come around. And then you also do have the Harvard transfer and Ida Tratout, who has been able to do a solid job north of 20 points per contest over at Harvard a season ago. Shot 36.5% from 3 after in his first 2 years. Shot about 24% from distance. So I do think that we're going to be seeing a little bit of Coolidge there. I like the way that Joel Brown is able to run the floor, but also with this Iona team, with so many moving pieces, you do have to expect some turnovers for them moving forward as well. This is the Long Beach State team that they're a very up-tempo, they're a very frenetic team, and under Tobin Anderson, Iona looking to run as well. So this is a spot where at a 153 or less, looking at the over, 154 higher to the under, and with Long Beach State, it is a body clock game. That is going to be rough for them. 8 a.m. local start time. I think that they're going to be up for this one, though. One to lay up to 5 with them, 6 or more, taking the points with Iona. 6:29, 6:30 on the betting board. It is Louisiana, and they're going to be taking on Buffalo. This is also a part of the Gulf Coast Showcase. This is a game that's presently off the board, and with Buffalo, I set them as a 9.5 point underdog, and I made my total a 153.5. 153 or less, looking at the over, 154 or higher to the under, and do have to project forward a few on these games. So if there's one or two matchups that's a little bit off, I do apologize in advance. But that said, when it comes to this Buffalo team, got just completely lambasted a day ago as Hofstra completely took it to them. Now you've got a Buffalo bunch that they're just looking to find their identity in the backcourt, because you've got Anquan Bolden Jr., the son of the great Anquan Bolden. He's been able to give this team a little bit of help, but you just don't have a lot of options in general. In terms of being able to bring the ball up, this team seems to be relying a lot on Isaiah Adams, who's been able to do a nice job as a 6'6", a little bit of a combo player, being able to chip in there 14.5 points, 4.5 boards, and this is a Buffalo team that's always looked to run, but it's hard to run when you just don't have a lot of guys who are able to knock down a lot of shots and don't necessarily have that true floor general out there. Cy Chapman has been able to do a solid job being able to pull in there some rebounds as well. And then when it comes to Louisiana, they, without a doubt, are missing what they had in Jordan Brown down low from a season ago, but still, this is a pretty rock-solid team that I think is going to be able to get some good contributions moving forward from the backcourt. As Demas Folks, he has been committing about 3.5 turnovers per contest, but has been able to do a nice job being able to give you right around 18 points per contest. You've got one of the better 3-point shooters in all of college basketball in Kentrell Jarnett, who has been able to shoot north of 40% per 3 each of the last 2 seasons. Kobe Julien, he's been able to do a very nice job of contributing 16 points per game, just dealt with injuries early on throughout his career and was just ineffective in general. Last season, after 2 years ago, he was averaging about 12.5 points per contest. You've got a Louisiana team that overall well, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, being robbed a little bit by turnovers, but not as much as Buffalo. With Joe Charles being able to win the battle down low, I think that Louisiana should be able to take it to Buffalo. So I did set this to where I'm going to lay up to 9 with Louisiana, 10 or more, taking a look at Buffalo, and then got a Louisiana team that's playing a little bit up-tempo. And Buffalo looks a push pace, but I just don't know where the scoring is going to come from for this Buffalo team. So 153 or less looking at the over, 154 higher to the under, and need at least 10 to take a shot on Buffalo. 631, 632 on the betting board. High Point and Illinois State do battle out there in Florida. This is a game that's off the board, but that said, I've got my handicap. I set Illinois State as a 6-point favorite and made my total 148. With High Point, they bring back Abdoulaye Thiam from a season ago, and he's been a rock-solid scorer. Last season was able to give the team 15 points per contest, was able to have a nice game for High Point in their win over Iona. He was able to put in their 27 big ones, and for High Point, I don't think that they're going to duplicate 12 of 28 from 3 and 26 of 30 at the free throw line like they did yesterday, and that's going to be a little bit of an issue. Now, they've been able to have Kamani Hamlin be able to step up after he began his career at Mississippi State. He's been someone at 6'7" and has been able to give the team a lot more rebounding than what they've had in the past, but they do have to match up with an Illinois State team that has the duo of Malachi Poindexter along with Dalton Banks in the backcourt. Banks has really stepped up as a facilitator, was just glued to the bench over at Southern Illinois the last few seasons, and has been able to give the team right around 4 assists. Not necessarily the world's greatest three-point shooter, but he's able to get the ball in his hands of guys that are able to do so, like Poindexter, who entered into yesterday, shooting about 32 to 33% from three-point range, but the battle should be won down low by Brandon Lee, the 7'1" gentleman that comes in from Illinois. Just a little bit of an afterthought for the Fighting Illini, but has been able to log about 7 rebounds per game, and then if you're able to get some versatility, you have Luke Kazabuke, who was able to come over from Kansas State a season ago as a part-time starter, shot about 36% from 3, and has been able to elevate ever since. And I think that that's going to be massive moving forward for an Illinois State team that I do think has a little bit of upside. And for High Point, this team really looks to push pace, but we got an Illinois State team that they do a good job being able to make things very slow against a Long Beach State team that typically is able to speed a lot of opponents up, nailed them to just 52 points. Very impressive, as they have held 3 of their 4 opponents this season, 261 or fewer. So got a battle of tempos, so as a result, set my total at 148, 147 for less, looking at the over 148.5 or higher to the under with High Point. Need at least 6.5 to take a shot with them, 5.5 or less, laying it with Illinois State. 633, 634 on the betting board. Hofstra is going to be playing against Wright State. This is also out there in Florida. No numbers up on this game, but with Hofstra, made them a 7-point favorite. Wright State got good news with Trey Kelvin coming back in the fold, but didn't feel like Trey Kelvin was necessarily 100% in that game, despite the fact that Wright State got the job done, got a win by kind of 91 to 85, but who is firing all cylinders right now? A.J. Braun. 18 points, 12 boards, and I say this with Kelvin being able to put up 24 points as he got it going a little bit more in the second half. But for this Wright State team, they've got a little bit more depth than they've had in past season. It's Andrew Welledge has been able to give you about 9 points per contest. He's someone that at 6'6" last season shot 47.5% from 3. Right now shooting well above 50% from distance. We should see that taper off a little bit. Fully recognize that this is a Hofstra team that is going to have perhaps a little bit of a tough time with some of the sides like A.J. Braun, Brandon Noel down low, but what I love about this Hofstra team is that they do such a good job of being able to guard the perimeter. This Hofstra team in conference play a season ago was a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, which I feel like surprises a lot of people, because when you think Hofstra, you think of that just great backcourt in general that's able to light you up, but this team is very much improved with their defense, and with this Hofstra bunch, you've got 2 main guards that you're able to look to. You've got Tyler Thomas, Charleston Dunbar, who coming into this tournament were combining for 37 points per contest. Dunbar was shooting just 11% from 3 entering into yesterday before he went off for 30 big points last year, shot 40% from distance, so water appears to be finding its level there. Thomas is able to give you about 4 boards per contest, chips in there 2.5 assists, but it's Juan Carlos who's been able to do a good job of being able to dish out the ball, as Joaquin Carlos has been able to give you more like 6 assists per contest, not necessarily a primary scorer, but with these 3 in the backcourt, Silas Sunday, the 7-footer, being able to give you some size down low and being able to grab rebounds, I do think that for Hofstra, they should be able to slow down this Wright State team a little bit and take it to a Wright State team that is suspect on defense, while Hofstra has been able to rise up on that front. So I did set this total at 151, 150.5 or less, looking at the over 151.5 or higher to the under, as Wright State, one of the more up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. With Hofstra, one to lay up to 6.5 with them, 7.5 or more, taking the points with Wright State. 635, 636 on the betting board. It is Florida International, and they are going to be playing against Loyola Marymount. This is from the Cayman Islands Classic, and with this one, you've got no numbers up as well, but I do have my handicap as I did set Loyola Marymount as a 6.5 point favorite and made my total 154.5. So 154 or less, looking at the over, 155 or higher. Going to be taking a look at the under. You've got a Florida International team that is really looking to create turnovers or looking to create a lot of havoc. Meanwhile, Loyola Marymount, they're looking to feature Dominic Harris, who comes over from Gonzaga, in terms of just putting on a 3-point shooting expose as for this Loyola Marymount team. They have really cranked up their tempo in recent years. They used to be one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball before Stan Johnson took over the program, and now he has been getting this team to play faster and faster. They were held to just 69 points against Oakland yesterday, but do like the offensive pieces that this team has. Justice Hill has always been someone that has been efficient with the ball. Entered in this tournament with 4 assists for every turnover that he logged and has never had more than 2 turnovers in a season. Meanwhile, Arterio Dean on the flip side for Florida International, a bit more of a high variance player who entered into this tournament shooting 44% from 3 with 5.8 assists per game and 3.6 steals per contest, but also very nearly 4 turnovers per game, and just don't have a lot down low for FIU. Jonathan Ibar comes in from North Florida. He's been able to give between 4.5 and 5 rebounds per game, but 7'1" Seth Pinckney, who came over from Quinnipiac, has never found his footing. Mohamed Sanogo, he needs to make things a go-go with a little bit more than 4 rebounds per contest. Meanwhile, Kelly Leo Pepe, the 6'6" combo player, is able to do a nice job of hitting the glass. At 6'6", he's always been throughout his career a relatively good 3-point shooter, and you're able to pair that up with Justin Wright, who comes in from NC Central, where he was shooting 40% from 3 with 16 points per contest a season ago. I think it's just going to be a little bit overwhelming by this Loyola Marymount team in a game that I think is going to be pretty up and down. So by total 154.5, 154 or less, looking at the over, 155 or higher, looking at the under as Florida International, looking to generate steals, and when they don't, they give up easy buckets, and with Loyola Marymount, willing to lay up to 6 with them, 7 or more, taking the points with FIU. 637, 638 on the betting board, another game from the Cayman Islands. This is between Marshall and Oakland, currently off the board, and I said Oakland as a 1.5 point favorite. I'd be surprised if Oakland is a favorite, so I'll most likely be looking at a money line play here with Oakland. The team is far better on defense this year than they have been in the past. You take a look at Oakland's first 2 games of the season, and they're trying to prove that it was no mirage that they hung within 11 against both Ohio State and against Illinois. They hold Bowling Green to 62 points and a little bit of a rough defensive performance against Drake, but that's just going to happen, and I like what Trey Townsend is able to bring to the table. Entering into this tournament, 17 points, 8 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals. At 6'8", he's able to pop some threes. Now, Rocket Watch just continues to be someone that I'm out on. He's looked much better in the last 2 games as he's been able to supply a combined 36 points, but he had 10 points in the first 3 games of the season. Has never been really an efficient scorer, but making up for that, how about Chris Conway and the fact that he's able to give the team right around 8.5 points, 4 boards, not necessarily a guy that's going to go out there and pop threes, but has been a big reason why Oakland has slowed down a little bit and has been quite a bit better on the defensive side of things. Meanwhile, for Marshall, the reason why they were able to elevate in the Sun Belt a season ago is that their defense was significantly better a season ago. They've been a little bit all over the place ever since then, though. I will say, they still are doing a relatively solid job on defense, giving up fewer than 70 points in 3 out of their first 4 games of the season, still playing up tempo, but they do lose their 2 main scorers, and Tavion Kinsey, Avante Andrew Taylor from the season ago, and as a result, they're currently shooting below 30% from 3-point range. They bring in the Maryland Eastern short transfer, Kavan Vols, who's been pretty solid for this team. He's able to give you multiple steals per contest. He's able to chip in there a double-figure amount of points. Not a great 3-point shooter, but is able to do a lot on the offensive end, and I think the big key for this team, getting Obiana Onchele-Killian to be what he was a few seasons ago. 2 seasons ago, non-conference play, he was averaging 4 blocks per contest. Currently, he's dealing with a little bit of an issue, so you're probably going to be looking at a lot of Nate Martin down low. Martin has been able to give the team right around about 8.5 rebounds per game, and in the absence of Onchele-Killian, he's been able to do a solid job, but with Onchele-Killian currently out, that means that Goran Milodonovic is going to need to step up as well. He dealt with an injury towards the beginning part of the season after last year, was pretty much a designated rebounder. 2021-22 campaign was able to give the team right around 4 boards per contest as a 7-footer from Montenegro, but I do think that for Marshall, they're going to have a tough time matching up with Trey Townsend, and Oakland, I just believe, has a little bit more versatility with Camden Kerfman having to be Mr. Do-It-All for this Marshall offense. So I did set my total a little bit lower than probably expected as well. I set my total to where a 148 or less. I'm going to be taking a look at the over, 149 or higher to the under, and with Oakland, made them the 1.5 point favorite. Most likely going to be taking them outright on the money line unless we get more than 2 with Marshall catching points. 639, 640 on the betting board. It is Akron, and they're going to be playing against Drake. This is also out there in the Cayman Islands. No numbers up on this game, but with Drake, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points, and I made my total 138.5. So 138 or less, looking at the over. 139 or higher, going to be taking a look at the under with Drake. I absolutely love what Tucker DeVries is able to bring to the table, and he is going to be the best player in this game. He's been able to log 20-plus points, 5-plus boards, 4-plus assists. I mean, he is the coach's son, and he is setting a good example for the team going up against an Akron bunch that has been without Ali to begin the season. 2-time transfer has yet to get his waiver approved, so certainly something that I'm going to be keeping up on, but even with him on the fold, you got double-double machine Enrique Freeman being able to do a nice job of being able to dominate down low, 15.5 points, north of 12 boards per contest. The facilitation has been a little bit questionable as Caleb Thornton has really fallen on some tough times. He really didn't get out there at all in that game against Utah State, but he's been able to give you about 3 assists per contest. I expect a little bit more from him moving forward, as when he's not out there on the floor, you're typically having to trust in someone like a Greg Tribble to be able to dole out the ball. He's been able to give you 3 assists per contest, has always struggled with regards to his 3-point shooting, but when it comes to this Akron team, they do feel a little bit disjointed in the backcourt, like what Sammy Hunter, the transfer from Ole Miss, is able to bring to the table. He went 4 of 9 from 3 a day ago, but Enrique Freeman, while he wins the battle down low, Darnell Brody, I think he's going to be able to hold up as well. 6'10" gentleman that's able to give you 7 rebounds per game, and with this Drake team, Aiton Wright, who comes in from CSUN, 15-plus point per game score from a season ago, I think is going to be able to do a nice job of holding up as well. So with Drake, did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 2 with them, 3 or more taking the points with Akron, and do you think that this is going to be more of a defensive slog? When Akron made the NCAA tournament 2 seasons ago, they were in the top 35 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Drake was a top 50 defense last season as well. So 138 or less, looking at the over. 139 or higher, taking a look at the under. 641, 642 on the betting board. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin is playing against Utah State. This is also out there in the Cayman Islands, and this is another game that's presently off the board, but with Utah State, I did set them as a underdog of 3 points. I feel like this is a relatively toss-up game, but the reason why I default to Stephen F. Austin is that they just have the harebrained style where they do a great job of just pressuring you when you get off the bus. They do such an incredible job of being able to force turnovers, and I think that that's going to take it out of a Utah State team that's a little bit makeshift under the tutelage of Danny Sprinkle. Now, the one thing I will say about Utah State is if a team is able to break this just ridiculous press, it is Utah State, because they've got Darius Brown, who throughout his career has been very trustworthy with the ball, has never had more than 1.7 turnovers per contest. He's played at CSUN, he's played at Montana State, now Utah State, and he's always been very good with the ball, and he doesn't necessarily score a ton, but he's a career north of 36% three-point shooter. Grado Sabor has really been able to step up as well. Last year for Montana State, he was solid with like 10 points, 5 boards per contest. This year he's averaging a double-double, has really been able to up that, but when are you going to be able to get out of someone like a Josh Uduche, who comes over from Coastal Carolina, has been able to give you a double-figure amount of points per game. Meanwhile, for Stephen F. Austin, they bring back darn near everything from last season, including Day-Day Hall, who is a double-figure scorer. He's picked up right where he left off, and for Stephen F. Austin, they are currently shooting north of 37% from three-point range last season. We're a top 20 team in terms of three-point shooting percentage. They bring in Frank Saney from Utah Tech to be able to fill the void left by Jalen Jackson Posey. You've been able to have AJ Kajuse be a very nice pass first guy. Season ago, he was able to give the team 9.5 points, 4.3 assists on 2.3 turnovers per contest, and the key is limiting those turnovers, because Stephen F. Austin, they entered into yesterday averaging 18.5 turnovers per game, but they do so knowing that they're going to get a lot of turnovers in return, so it causes for a lot of up and down games and causes for a lot of harebraininess in general. With regards to Stephen F. Austin, on any given day, they're going to give up less than 60. On any given day, they're going to give up north of 85. There's not really a lot of rhyme or reason with them. In Utah State, they're playing much more defense-oriented under the tutelage of Danny Sprinkle, but I do think that Stephen F. Austin going to be able to speed things up a little bit, so 146.5 or less, looking at the over. 147.5 or higher, going to be taking a look at the under, and with Stephen F. Austin, made them a 3-point favorite, so one to lay up to 2.5 with them, 3.5 or more, taking a look at Utah State. 643, 644 on the betting board. It is Stetson, and they're playing against Central Michigan. This is from the Sunshine Slam, and this is a game that's presently off the board, but with Central Michigan, I did set them as a 1-point favorite, so if I'm able to get Central Michigan as a pick'em or better, I'm going to be taking a look at them. Need to be getting points with Stetson to consider them, and then did set my total at 141 at 140.5 or less, looking at the over. 141.5 or higher. Going to be diving in on the under with Stetson. This team last season was really able to be a bunch of snipers from three-point range. They were one of the top three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, but you lose Weeza Ponzo, who was a 46% three-point shooter at 6'7" a season ago, and it's caused the team to be a little bit more disjointed. You did get a 12 of 13 shooting day from Aubin. Gets Derse down low. I think that that's going to be driving up a little bit as assists for Stetson. They shot 10 of 24 from distance a day ago. This is a Stetson team that is playing very close to their home campus out there in Daytona Beach, so that does give them a little bit of an edge here in my opinion, but still willing to ride with Central Michigan because Central Michigan, I think, has the best floor general out there in Anthony Pritchard, who he was at Tulsa last season, so thus far this season has been able to log a little bit over 16 points, 5.5 boards, giving out 4.5 assists per game while doing a good job of not turning it over a ton. Now, Stefan Swetson, he's been in the program for quite a while with Stetson, and he does a good job of giving you 5+ assists per game. What has been really concerning with him, though, is that he has seen a big jump in turnovers. The last few seasons, it's averaged about 2 per game. He's been turning it over north of 4 times per contest, and that's a big reason why Stetson has been off to a little bit of a rough start. Now, for Central Michigan, they're going to have a tough time against Aubin Gestese, who went 12 of 13 from the floor yesterday, but I do think that Malik Harding is going to be able to hold up down low. He's been able to give the team right around 4 rebounds per contest. You don't necessarily have ideal size with Brian Taylor at 6'6", but he's been able to do a nice job giving you about 10 or so points in the neighborhood, about 6 rebounds per contest. Not a great three-point shooter, but has all sorts of versatility for the team as well. We've seen Central Michigan match up with some really good competition. They were able to get the outright win against Florida. They had a rough one against Oklahoma to begin the season, but all in all, I do like the way that the pieces are falling into place in Central Michigan. It does feel like they're becoming a little bit more of a defense-oriented team as they have scored 70 points or fewer in every one of their games as far this season. Meanwhile, Stetson, while they are a slow-tempo team, they are a team that they give up the 3 quite a bit, and they hit quite a few threes. So, set my total to where 140.5 or less, looking at the over 140.5 or lower, going to be taking a look at the under, and with Stetson, made them the underdog of a point. So, looking at Central Michigan as a pick'em / as any sort of an underdog outright on the money line. 645, 646 on the betting board. Siena's going to be playing against Milwaukee from Daytona Beach. This is a game that's off the board, and with UW Milwaukee, I did set them as an 8-point favorite. I'm just out on the Siena team until Michael Ealy comes back. It is very apparent how much he meant to this team, as without him, they've been about as useful as a poopy flavored lollipop. It has not been terrific, to say the least, and got a UW Milwaukee team that they certainly do have a primary scorer in BJ Freeman, who's been able to give you well north of 20 points per contest. He's able to give you 5 boards. He's able to give out a few assists. He impacts every single aspect of what UW Milwaukee does, but you do have a little bit of depth behind him. Kentrell Pullian last season was able to give you about 10 points, shot 40% from 3-point range. Marquise Browning is able to give you a few assists as well. You've been able to have the Duff man be able to deliver as well as Darius Duffy. He's come in as a little bit of starter from the non-Division I level. He's been able to do a nice job pulling in there about 5 rebounds per contest. And with this UW Milwaukee team, if they really want to, if they give Faison Fields, who comes in from Old Dominion, a few more minutes, they can go right around 8 to 9 deep. Meanwhile, you just don't have as many options with the Siena team. Siena lost a lot via the transfer portal, and they really didn't bring anything back. They're looking to Zach Tekken, who's been able to give you in the neighborhood of about 14 points per contest to be able to throw out the ball, but he was missing in the game yesterday against Central Michigan, so that's yet another loss for a Siena team that they really couldn't afford any more losses. They don't have any sort of a main floor general out there, so they had Braylon Smith, a true freshman, trying to dish out the balls at 6'5", a little bit of a point forward, and while he gave out 6 assists in that loss to Central Michigan, 5 turnovers as a team as a whole at 21. Marquette, not necessarily a team that's going to swarm for a bunch of turnovers, but you give them easy opportunities, and they're going to take advantage of them. And then you've got Giovanni Amaruju, who comes over from Sam Houston State, who's been able to give you a few rebounds down low, but he's clearly a little bit of a work in progress and a little bit of a developmental piece. So with UW Milwaukee against this completely outgunned Siena team, I do think that they take it to them. And for Siena, they've had a tough time on offense, but they've also had a brutal time on defense. So somebody told where a 145.5 or less, I'm going to be taking a look at the over, and 146.5 or higher, going to be taking a look at the under. UW Milwaukee, a top 25 team in terms of possessions per game from a season ago, and with Milwaukee willing to lay up to 7.5 with them, 8.5 or more taking the points with Siena. 306-547, 306-548. This is a game between UNLV and Richmond. This is a game that is presently off the board, and when it comes to UNLV, I did set them as a 3.5 point favorite, so 3 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and at a 4 or higher, I'm going to be willing to take the points with the Itsy Bitsy Spiders. For Richmond, they came out and they shot very hot from 3-point range to begin the season, and they had a very nice effort against Colorado yesterday, but do have some question marks with the likes of a Delani Hunt in the backcourt. What I do like is Neil Quinn, the true 7-footer that's able to give you a few assists. He's been able to do a nice job of just mixing and shaking for the team with about 10 points, 6 boards. That is going to be very hard for UNLV to match up with, but UNLV has their own do-it-all player in 6'6" Luis Rodriguez, who a season ago was able to give the team a double-figure amount of points, 5 boards, just impacts all aspects of basketball. They did lose a few pieces pieces via the transfer portal a season ago, but they did a nice job of being able to restock as they bring in a starter from Oklahoma in Jalen Hill, who's been really making a nice impact on the game. Right around 13 points, right around 7.5 boards, capable of shooting threes at 6'6", not necessarily a supreme three-point shooter, but Deaton Thomas Jr. has really stepped up in the backcourt as well. This team needed a little bit of a floor general as a true freshman. He has been able to give out north of 6 assists per contest, all while turning it over fewer than 2 times per game, which is big because UNLV, they do a good job of being able to generate steals. They haven't done as much of that this year as they did a season ago. They're looking to play a little bit more down low with bringing in Isaiah Cottrell, the 6'11" gentleman from West Virginia. They also bring in Caleb Boone, who was a part of that Oklahoma State program a few seasons ago. But I do think that for UNLV, they're going to be able to take it to a Richmond team that has a nice three-point shooter in Jordan King. But UNLV, I feel like, does a solid job of being able to guard from the outside. So it is a circumstance where I did say UNLV has a 3.5-point favorite. Want to lay up to 3 with them for them. We're going to be taking a look at the points with Richmond. And Richmond, one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball last few seasons. Semi-total where a 140 or higher looking at the under, 139 or less looking at the over. 649, 650 on the betting board. Also out there from Daytona Beach, you've got Colorado and Florida State doing battle. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I said Colorado as a 9-point favorite, so want to lay up to 8.5 with them, 9.5 or more. Going to be taking a look at the points with Florida State. Did award Florida State about a 1.5 because this is in the state of Florida, but I've got my question marks with Florida State. They are clearly a work in progress on defense as this team is now giving up 75-plus points in each of their last 2 games. First 2 games, they were relatively solid, but those were against lesser competition. And with Florida State, who's going to step up and be that main rebounder for this team? You thought that Baba Miller was just suffering from the fact that he couldn't get out there on the floor consistently to begin the season. He's been a little bit of a Buster Rooney. You've got Cam Fletcher, who's been able to give you right around like 8 points, 4.5 boards, but he doesn't really necessarily do anything well. It's all been on the plate of Darren Green Jr. to bail this team out as he's been able to log a little bit over 13 points per contest, as always been a mid to high 30s three-point shooter, as you've had Mr. Jalen Worley be versatile in the way that he gives out assists, he gives you a few steals, he just doesn't give you any scoring whatsoever though. And then with this Colorado team, this team is very well put together on defense. They've got a lot of size with Eddie Lampkin giving you 8+ rebounds per game. I really like what Luke O'Brien is able to do as well. 6'8", little bit of a do-it-all guy that a season ago was able to see a rise in his minutes. He was able to log about 5.5 boards per contest, a career 34% three-point shooter as well. And then KJ Simpson, Tristan Da Silva, these are a pair of guys that are both coming off of averaging 15.9 points per contest a season ago, combining to shoot right now about 50% from three-point range. I do think we're going to see a little bit of a fall off there, and Colorado proved yesterday that their defense is quite stout. 63 points or fewer surrendered in 3 out of their 4 games thus far this season. Very encouraging signs there, and even though Colorado had a little bit of a tough time getting their offense going, their defense was still able to hold up, and Florida State, they're certainly going to be looking to push tempo. I do think that this is going to be a bit more of an up-tempo game. Semi-total where 150.5 or less, looking at the over 151.5 or higher to the under, but I do think that Colorado does a good job down low, and I do think that they take it to a Florida State team that they've got a lot of options, but not necessarily a lot of good options. So want to lay up to 8.5 with Colorado, 9.5 or more. Going to be taking a look at the points with Florida State. 651, 652 on the betting board. It is Syracuse, and they're playing against Gonzaga. This is out from lovely Maui. This is a game that is presently off the board, but I've got my numbers for this one as I'm actually seeing a number come up onto the board right now. Gonzaga on the opener is an 11.5-point favorite. Total on this game is 160. I also set my number at an 11.5. So this is going to be a little bit of a wait and see for me. If I can get a 12 or more, I'll be taking a shot on Syracuse. 11 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Gonzaga. And this is a circumstance where with Syracuse, I actually liked what I saw from them yesterday until the final 3 minutes. They had Judah Mintz. They also had their other main guard in J.J. Starlin really struggle all throughout the game, and yet they held in there against Tennessee. I think that speaks to the fact that Tennessee still does have some deficiencies, to say the least, and I don't know if I can fully buy into them as much as many people, but at the same time, I do take a look at this Gonzaga team, and it is very encouraging to see Graham Ike be able to pop some threes. He showed some nice versatility in that game against Purdue yesterday. In my opinion, there's absolutely no shame in that loss for Gonzaga as they went 6 of 32 from three-point range. This is clearly not the friendly Maui rims that we are used to seeing, but For Gonzaga, you do have Ryan Nembhard doing a good job of running the offense very efficiently. He had 6 assists, 3 steals, just 2 turnovers yesterday. That loss was not on him, although he did go 1 of 9 from 3-point range. And I do expect them to be able to get a little bit more moving forward. And Braden Huff, is coming as a freshman. He's been able to do a solid job as a scorer as well. Cooled down yesterday, but all in all, in his first 3 games, has been able to log north of 15 points per contest. And then Anton Watson is someone that I just don't think that Syracuse is going to be able to match up with Syracuse. You have been utilizing a little bit more in terms of the depth. Malik Brown has been able to give you about 7 points, about 4.5 boards per contest, and I do like what I've seen out of Chris Bell as well. He has really stepped up with about 14 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range as well, so that's going to be big for this team moving forward. And you also have to see what Benny Williams is able to bring to the table as well. Began the season with a little bit of a suspension. He's a very versatile, very athletic guy, but someone that can sometimes be a little bit of a knucklehead and does not make smart plays in general out there on the floor. You have Mahim McLeod, who I think is going to be rendered useless at 7'4". He brings a lot of size, but at the same time, I just don't think that he's a fit in this game. But I do think that Mintz and J.J. Starlin going to be able to keep up with the high-flying Gonzaga back, where I think that we went a little bit too far with this total. Again, I do think that there is something with the rims, and in a normal Maui environment, I probably would set my total closer to a 160. Here at the Sand Sheriff Center, went with a 155.5, and as I've been doing this number has moved to 12.5. At 12.5 would be one to buy in on Syracuse. Need at least a 12 or more to take a shot on them and look at the under. 653, 654 on the betting board. This is an off-the-board game. This is going to be involving Chaminade and the loser of UCLA versus Marquette. I'm not going to go too far on this one because whoever loses that game is going to be north of a 30-point favorite. I'm just going to call it what it is. The Chaminade team was a 500 team at the Division II level a season ago. You got Wyatt Lowell, who he comes in from Portland, and over at Portland, he was actually a solid 3-point shooter. He's able to give you a little bit of a monochrome of offensive punch with this team, but we saw them in the exhibitions from a season ago. They were getting dump trucked by 40 points by everyone except for Louisville, just because Louisville, they are down in the dumps as of right now. But I just take a look at this bunch in terms of UCLA or Marquette. They're going to be able to take it to them. They've got far better athletes in general. They've got much more down low. Even Marquette, who all they have is also Ogudero, and then they've got mostly a backcourt-oriented team. But I do think that if you see UCLA versus Chaminade, this is going to be a lower total. I'd be setting that more around about a 142 because UCLA is playing a bit more low and slow. You saw the total in the game against Kansas being the mid to lower 150, so at a 141 or half or less would be looked at the over 142 and a half or higher to the under. And then if UCLA is playing against Chaminade, we'll be setting them more around a 32-point favorite, with Marquette probably closer to about 38, maybe even 39. So check back in the morning at Gene and Ernst Cordy one there, but this is one where Chaminade is really up against it. 655, 656 on the betting board. It is Purdue, and they're going to be playing against Tennessee. Purdue opens up a 2-point favorite with a total of 134.5. I set Purdue as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them with Tennessee. They got the job done, and they were able to get the cover against Syracuse, but you saw them have their issues, and I think that this is really going to put to the test the new look Tennessee offense, because now you have to go up against a Purdue team that is just absolutely willing to maul you, and I think that Zach Edey going to be able to have himself a day down low. Now, with Tennessee, they're able to come at you with waves upon waves of big men, as you've got Jonas Adu, who's been able to do a solid job, being able to give you about 7 rebounds per contest. One of the most fun names to say, Toby Awaka, he's been able to do a solid job as well, being able to pull in there some rebounds, but he was very much limited in the game against Syracuse yesterday. I don't know if something's up with him in terms of an injury, but he played one more minute than myself, so that's something that you want to be taking a look at moving forward. And if he's out of the fold, a Tennessee team that had just a ton of depth coming into the season, you do have to have a few question marks with them. Guy Ziegler, he's still coming back from injury. He had 6 turnovers in 21 minutes yesterday. Don't connect. He has been a tremendous find for this team. He's averaging north of 18 points per contest, shooting it very well from 3-point range. Jordan Gainey is able to give you quite a bit on the offensive side of things as well. But with Purdue, the year 1 to year 2 bump that you're seeing with these guards is very real. Fletcher Lawyer hasn't necessarily seen like a big giant rise in his numbers, but he's playing very well in tandem with Lance Jones, who's been able to give you about 10 points per contest. Jones has never been really an explosive 3-point shooter, but that's why you've got Braden Smith, who's just a jack of all trades, who thus far this season has been able to give you about 13 points per contest. Entered into yesterday shooting 50% from 3, took a little bit of a fall off, but he's also able to give you north of 5 boards. He's also able to give you north of 6 assists per contest. Really like what he's doing. Miles Colvin is a nice versatile piece. Cameron Heide is someone who at 6'7" comes comes in from YZ of Minnesota, and he's been able to make a nice impact on the team as well. I like his versatility. And hey, if you're able to get something out of Trey Kaufman-Wren, guys like this, you really have a lot of depth with this Purdue team, along with Giant of the Earth, Zach Edey. I think that this is going to be a defense-oriented game. I think that this is going to be a slow grinder. I think that both teams are going to have a tough time being able to get past the 60-point plateau, but I do think that in the end, Purdue has more ways to be able to score and get the job done. Set Purdue as a 4-point favorite. Going to be willing to lay the number. Maybe my total 128. It's also diving in on the under. 657, 658 on the betting board. I have to project forward a little bit as this is going to be Kansas and the winner of Marquette versus UCLA. So this game is presently off the board. I'm sort of expecting this to be Marquette, and if you do get Kansas versus Marquette, I'm setting Kansas as a 3.5-point favorite with a total to where a 151 or less, looking at the over 152 or higher to the under. If it would be UCLA, this number would be closer to about 8.5/9. That depends upon what we do see from UCLA, because they are a little bit of a team of mystery right now with this UCLA team. They've got a very young bunch. They look to the international route to bring in a lot of these guys, and a lot of the holdovers from a season ago, they are guys that were former top 100 recruits like Dylan Andrews, Kenneth Nwaba, guys like this that you want to see them take strides moving forward, and there's a lot of question mark. You've got Lazer Stefanovic, who comes in from Utah, has been able to shoot it well from three, and Ade Mara has good 7'3" size, but feels like he's very, very raw. Really, the lone reliable piece you have is Adam Bona. Meanwhile, for Marquette, this is a well put together team that we know their deficiency. It's down low. Really, other than Oso Ogudero, you don't necessarily have a ton in the post. So Ben Gold has been able to give you a few rebounds as well, but with Marquette, this team is able to bomb it from 3-point range. Pretty much everyone out there on the floor. Sans Ogudero is a threat to be able to shoot from three. Cam Jones has really taken over as a good go-to scorer, and then Tyler Kolek, one of the best guards in all of college basketball, entered into the Maui Invitational with about 15 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, a steal per contest, just so efficient with the ball. And then for Kansas, we all know where we're going to get out of Hunter Dickinson, someone who's 7 feet tall, someone's able to pop it from 3-point range, and having someone like DeJuan Harris fitting in the ball, I think is just absolutely paramount. He sometimes needs to be a little bit more of an assertive scorer, but he does such an amazing job of being able to play tough, tenacious defense, does a nice job giving out the ball to begin the season, 7.3 assists and 2 turnovers per contest. So I have a few question marks with this team. Are you going to be able to get anything out of someone like a Johnny Furphy? Is the Towson transfer Nick Timberlake going to be able to fit in with this offense? But all in all, going into yesterday, Kansas looking very good on that front, shooting 43.5% from three, which is going to be taking a little bit of a fall off, but they're most likely going to be playing a Marquette team that's a little bit more lax on defense, while Kansas, they always have a calling card of being able to play good, tough defense. So if you do get Kansas versus Marquette, we'll be setting my total to where 151 or less, looking at the over 152 or higher to the under end. We'll be setting Kansas as a 3.5-point favorite, so we'll be willing to lay with them 3 or less, and 4 more. We'll be taking a look at Marquette with UCLA. Would be willing to lay up to more like 8 to 8.5 with Kansas, and that would be a total in which I would slash at by at minimum 8 points. If not, I'd be setting that total more around about a 141 or so. 659, 660 on the betting board. This is from Hard Rock Arena out there in Riviera, Mexico, as you've got James Madison and Southern Illinois doing battle. Southern Illinois, an underdog between 5 and 5.5 points. Totals anywhere between 148.5 and 149, so you can straight 147 out there as well. And with James Madison, I set them as a 4-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take 5 to 5.5 with Southern Illinois. It's something that I talked about with Justin Perry on the show a few days ago. I do think we're going to see a little bit of regression with this James Madison team, and this James Madison team, they are pretty stinking awesome. At the same time, too, I do have a little bit of a tough time believing that they're going to continue to shoot from 3-point range the way that they have to begin the season. And when it comes to this James Madison bunch as well, they do have really good depth, but now they go up against a Southern Illinois team that's really unlike anything that they've seen. Sans maybe Radford, and we saw Radford give them a little bit of a tough time over the weekend as well. With this Southern Illinois team, they're going to be featuring Xavier Johnson, who he began his career over at George Mason. He does a good job of being able to dole out the ball, has become a little bit more of a passive scorer, though he's had to crank that up a little bit more this season. He's been able to log 20 points per contest. I do think that we're going to be seeing a fall off on that front, but with this Southern Illinois team, they do a good job of being able to rebound by committee. They bring in the gentleman from St. Peter's Elite 8 team, and Clarence Rupert, who's been able to give you 9 rebounds per game, has really come along as an overall player. RJ McGee is someone that comes in from Tulane as well. I think that there's upside here. He's really been pedestrian here in the first few games of the season, but season ago at Tulane, he was able to give the team about 3 boards, 4.5 points. I think that he's going to be a nice role player for this team. And on the flip side, you got a James Madison team that has Terrence Edwards, who's absolutely lighting it up with 20 points per contest, but there's just a lot of shots for James Madison, who's shooting 39% from 3 on volume that have went that probably should not be going. Now, the one thing that James Madison does really well, they force turnovers. They're getting 10 steals per game, and TJ Bickerstaff has really helped this team out down low. Comes in from the ACC over at Boston College a season ago. He was able to give the team 5+ rebounds per contest, more like 6+ rebounds 2 seasons ago, so I think that he is going to be able to win that battle down low, but I do think that for James Madison, a little bit of Coolidge is coming against a Southern Illinois team that they have their deficiencies on offense. They're one of the more tough mid-major defenses in all of college basketball, though, so I'm going to be willing to take 5 with Southern Illinois, and I do think that Southern Illinois slows down James Madison. I set my total at 142. I'm going to be taking a look at the under, and I'm going to be taking the points with Southern Illinois. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 661, 662. New Mexico State and Fresno State do battle from a Riviera. You've got Fresno State, a favorite of any between 3 and 5 points. Your total is between 142.5 and 144. I set New Mexico State as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be taking them out right on the money line. I just really don't understand the love for this Fresno State team. They lose a lot from last year, and they weren't even that great last year. Now, there is one guy that I really like for Fresno State. That would be Eduardo Andre 3000. He has been able to do a pretty tremendous job. When he was actually able to get minutes a season ago, he was able to average 8+ rebounds per game in starts. You've got Anyak Boyaki, who's been able to help out as well. He's 6'11". After he was a little bit of an afterthought at Arizona State a season ago, he's been able to come in, been able to give the team 6 boards per contest. So Fresno State, not too bad down low. They had a little bit of 3-point shooting in Xavier DuSalle after Fresno State was about 325th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage a season ago. But for Fresno State, 16.3 turnovers per game. I recognize that Isaiah Hill's giving out 7 assists per contest and has been a relatively solid scorer with in the neighborhood about 12.5 points per contest, but the 40% 3-point shooting certainly going to be cooling off for 1, and 2, those turnovers are very costly going up against a New Mexico State team that all of a sudden they've got Femi Olakala in the fold. He was a 2-time transfer. He was waiting on a waiver. He's gotten that waiver. Now he's back out there on the floor. Now you have been dealing with a little bit of an injury to Brandon Suggs, but it's not like he did anything in the first 2 games of the season either. He had only given the team a combined 6 points in those 2 games. So getting Olakala, who in his debut at 18 points, 8 boards, 4 steals, was the primary scorer ever at Pittsburgh a few seasons ago. That's big because you've got Jalen Jackson-Posey, who's able to play off of him. Last year shot 45% from 3 at Stephen F. Austin, shooting in the neighborhood about 46% thus far this season. He's also been a nice trigger man in terms of doling out the ball. You are going to need a little bit more rebounding out of Clarence Jackson, the transfer from Wichita State, and this is a team that lacks a little bit of size, but Kazu Azugi, he comes over with his coach in Jason Hooten over from Sam Houston State. I think he's going to be able to bring a little bit of rough and tumble down low. Began his career over at UTEP and Kansas State. He's been able to give the team about 5 boards per contest at 6'10". He's got a frame that I think is going to be able to match up down low. And then Robert Carpenter, he was actually able to do something at Mississippi Valley State a few seasons ago. Very, very few people are able to do that. He's been able to come in and he's been able to give this team some production with about 11 points per contest. I like his overall game, and I do think that for New Mexico State, they are going to be able to match up down low with Fresno State. Fresno State is going to cool off from 3, and I think that the turnover deficiencies of Fresno State going to nip them in the butt. I set my total at 139.5. Fresno State, one of the slower teams in terms of their tempo in all of college basketball, so diving in on the under. And with New Mexico State, won't take them out right on the money line. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502, Binghamton and Sacred Heart do battle. Sacred Heart, the home team, are 3.5 point favorites. Your total on this game, it is 145.5 to 146. I know that I've got a Binghamton stan that's on my Twitter account. Feel good here. I'm going to be willing to take Binghamton. I'm not going to take them outright, but I'm going to take them getting 3.5 points. I set my number at 3. For Binghamton, they do lose a little bit of size down low from a season ago, and they are going to have a tough time with the versatility that you do have with Sacred Heart. But Samir Torrance, the Syracuse transfer, has really impressed me. Just doing it all. 10.5 points, 6 boards, 6.5 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. He's one of the most talented players out there in the America East. And then you're bringing in someone like Atemu Chenery. I like what he was able to bring to the table. Over at Quinnipiac, he's become a double-figure scorer for the team. I felt like he should have been featured a little bit more back while he was over at Quinnipiac. Once again, the big problem is, what are you going to be able to get down low out of someone like a Tavion White, who's been able to give the team a few rebounds? He was glued to the bench a season ago, but has been able to elevate in terms of his rebounding. He's got a good 6'8" frame for Sacred Heart. I do think that they are going to have the best post presence in this game, but you have a little bit of question mark when it comes to the backcourt. They do have Aiden Carpenter. They do have Raheem Solomon, a pair of guys who will be able to give you about 10 and 11 points per contest. Both began their careers in the Metro Atlantic in the case of Carpenter over at Siena, and then Solomon was over at Niagara. Ahmad Harid on the flip side, though, for Binghamton. I like the way that he's very versatile as well. About 8 points, 4.5 boards. Not afraid to get his nose dirty. He'll give you a block, a steal per contest as well. And for Sacred Heart, they have been registering about 11.5 steals per contest. I think that this is something that's going to be going very, very downward, because with Sacred Heart, they are themselves a team that is going to turn it over a little bit with 13 turnovers per contest. They're currently shooting north of 40% from three-point range. We should see a little bit of a fall off here, though. Nick Okoletti, I think, is going to be able to hold things down low for Sacred Heart. 15.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest, and then you've gotten some really good production out of Tanner Thomas. Tanner Thomas, a 6'6" do-it-all player who season ago really didn't contribute a ton for Sacred Heart, about 7 points, 4.5 boards. He's really elevated, 14.5 points, 7 boards, steal and a half per contest. Sacred Heart does feel like a little bit of a top-heavy team, unless if they're able to get Kyle McGee, the non-Division I transfer, going in. I do think that Samir Torrance, being the best guard out there on the floor, going to be able to keep Binghamton snug. And Binghamton, by the way, really upping their defense. 60 points or fewer surrendered in each of their last 3 games. So this is a total that I set at a 143. I'm going to be diving under. Binghamton, they're really taking on a little bit more of a defensive style, so I do think that that's going to be able to keep them in this game. Set Sacred Heart as a 3-point favorite, so taking 3.5 with Binghamton and taking a look at the under. Also, early game, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 306-503, 306-504. East Carolina is going to be playing us to Prairie View. Prairie View, an underdog of between 11 and 11.5 points. 151 to 152.5 is your total. And Eastern Kentucky, I did set as a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Eastern Kentucky. This team, year in and year out, does a very solid job of being able to generate turnovers. We've got a Prairie View team that they do a nice job of being able to generate them as well, but they turn the ball over a lot. And the big issue that you always have with Prairie View is they have no stinking shooting whatsoever. And that seems to be the case once again this year for this team, as they've been able to shoot about 27.7% from three-point range. And I do like the Old Dominion transfer and Charles Smith IV. He has come in and he's been able to give the team 16.5 points, 5.5 boards. He's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, so that's been terrific. And they should be able to improve their three-point shooting a little bit. Nick Gonzalez, he comes in from Montana State, where 2 seasons ago was able to shoot about 36.5% from three, with 5.5 points per contest. So you've got a nice starting point there. But for Prairie View, a little bit north of 13 turnovers per contest. Now, in return, they've been able to generate about 9 steals per game, and you do bring in the Tarleton State transfer in Javante Hopkins, who has been able to give you 13 points, 8 boards. He's also turned the ball over 4.5 times per contest, and that's a little bit of an issue for an Eastern Kentucky team that is going to be able to dominate things down low with Isaiah Cozart, who's been able to average a double-double, 20 points, 11 boards. He's had 12 blocks in the first 3 games of the season. Then Devontae Bland and Michael Moreno. These 2 guys are able to combine for a little bit over 20 points per contest. Both of these guys stand right around 6'6", 6'7". They're able to bomb it in the mid-30s from three-point range as well. So very much a difficult time for Prairie View to be able to match up with this, as they just don't necessarily have ideal size. And if you're able to get a little bit more out of Turner Buttery, who a season ago, he was a relative reserve for this Eastern Kentucky team, but was able to see some minutes in the CBI run that they had, I think that is going to be big for them moving forward. And you've also been able to get about 8 points per contest as well out of Tayshawn Colmer, who last season as a starter was able to do a nice job running the offense with about 3.5 assists per contest. I think that Eastern Kentucky is just very much an advanced form of Prairie View, and one with more size than Prairie View. So as a circumstance where I'm willing to lay up to 12 with Eastern Kentucky, did set my total at a 147.5. I'm going to be diving in on the under, because while Eastern Kentucky plays very up-tempo, I just don't think the Prairie View it's enough shots to be able to do their end with regards to the total. So looking under and looking at Eastern Kentucky, 306-505, 306-506. McNeese is going to be playing against Texas State. Neutral court game that sees McNeese as between a 3.5 and a 4-point favorite. Your total is anywhere between 138 and 139.5. And with McNeese, set them as a 3-point favorite. Now that we're getting 4, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Texas State. Well, it's been a Texas 2-step for Texas State into the loss column. It has not been too terrific for them. You can tell that without Mason Harrell in the fold, that has really been hurting them thus far this season. But with this Texas State bunch, I do think that they're going to remain lively in this game. It is in Ruston, Louisiana. They're used to playing against Louisiana Tech from time to time here as well. But I do think that for Texas State, they are going to be able to hold in there, because I like what they've got down low. You've been able to get some some good production with Tyrell Morgan being able to give you 14 points, 8 boards. Now, with Morgan, been dealing with a little bit of an injury. We need to wait and see on him. Personally, I think that he's probably going to be out of the fold, and the man that has replaced him in Brandon Love in the last 2 games has really been able to emerge. He combined 24 points, 17 boards, and 9 blocks in the absence of Morgan. So you're still in good hands down low. You've got Josh O'Garo. He comes in from San Jose State, where 2 seasons ago was a little bit of an afterthought, was a former Power 5 recruit. He's been able to give you about 9.5 points, 5 boards as a 6'6", do-it-all sort of player. Texas State certainly going to have their issues in terms of three-point shooting, but they also go up against the McNeese team that they looked very impressive night number 1, being able to get that win against VCU. And if you look at the overall numbers, they're shooting north of 40% from 3. They're turning the ball over 8 times per contest. This is very artificially inflated, as they have played at minimum 2, if not 3, non-Division I teams. I like Christian Schulme coming back from last season. He was able to give the team just below a double-double a season ago. He's picking up right where he left off, 12 points, right around 10 rebounds per contest. They also bring in DJ Turn It Up Richards, who has been able to give the team about 12 points per contest. He was a starter over at UTSA a season ago, shot in the mid-30s from three-point range. Right now shooting 55% from 3, but I do think what comes up must come down for McNeese. They're right now shooting over 42% from 3, and got really versatile and good pieces like Shahada Wells at UT Arlington a few seasons ago was a 15-plus point per game scorer. Ontavion Cullum, he was the main guy over at Cal State Bakersfield a season ago. He's been in and out of the fold, but when he's been out there, Nasir Mann, who comes in from the non-Division I level, he has been the man, being able to give you right around 5.5 rebounds per game. But I do think that McNeese is still going to be dealing with some chemistry issues, which I think will allow Texas State to be able to hold in this game. Certainly Texas State going to be a little bit outgunned in the backcourt, but I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job with their slow, grimy, defense-oriented style of being able to hold in this game. So this is a circumstance where I did set my line more around a 3, so being able to get north of 3, going to be willing to take the points with Texas State. McNeese looking to play a little bit more up-tempo. Texas State, they've always got their slow, grimy style, so going to be diving in on this little underset mine at a 137, and won't take anything north of 3 with Texas State. 306-507, 306-508. The Citadel and NC Central do battle, and the Citadel is a 1.5 point favorite, and your total on this game is 132.5, and with the Citadel, did set them as 2.5 point favorites. I'm going to be willing to take them with the Citadel. It was a very less than terrific first half for them. They scored 13 points in the first half yesterday and still found a way to win the game. I think that actually says a lot about how well coached this Citadel team is. They didn't get down on themselves. They scored 49 points in the second half, and I think they're going to have the best post presence in this game. Quentin Malora Brown, who he comes over from Vanderbilt, where he was starter the last 2 seasons, and he's been able to log for the team right in the neighborhood about 8 points, just under 8.5 rebounds per game. He has been rock solid, and you've got some good shooting from the outside with this team as well, with AJ Smith along with Elijah Morgan being able to be the headliners for this team. A combined 34 points from these 2 guys yesterday. Morgan was about a 30% three-point shooter a season ago, throws out the ball a little bit more. Meanwhile, with AJ Smith, he does play a little bit more off the ball and is able to also give the team about 5 rebounds per game, along with being able to bring some shooting pop for them as well. On the flip side, you've got an NC Central team that they have to pick up the pieces from last season because Eric Boone was such a big part of that backcourt. You were able to have Justin Wright be a 16 point per game scorer overall last season. NC Central shot about 36% from 3, but they had a bunch of turnovers north of 15 per contest. The turnovers have went down, so has the overall 3-point shooting as well. And no longer do they have Brendan Medley-Bacon holding things down low, and now they only have one guy that's able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, Emmanuel Izabooner, who spent a lot of time out there in the Big South. Now, I do like the 2 guys that you have in the backcourt. Pooh Boy King, which that's his actual name, and Jadarius Harris have been able to log just under 30 points per contest. Both are shooting north of 40% from 3, but I do think that we're going to see that cool off a little bit. The Citadel has actually been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. Part of it was Idaho St just not finding the bottom of the basket yesterday at 4 of 17, but they've been able to really improve that defense under Ed Conroy. The NC Central bunch is certainly playing a little bit slower as well, but I do think that the Citadel not going to come out and score 13 points in the first half. I think that this total is set just a little bit too low, especially if you get some late game fouling here as well. So in a neutral court environment, I am going to be willing to lay up to 2 with the Citadel. This is from Bues Creek, North Carolina, and with this total set mine at a 134.5. So want to lay up to a deuce with the Citadel and going to be taking a look at the over. 306-509, 306-510. It is East Carolina. They play host to Kennesaw State. We give our over to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls, as Kennesaw State is 6.5 point underdog. Total is 158.5. Semi-total of 146.5. 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take a look at the under with Kennesaw State. No question about it. They're still playing quite a bit up-tempo after what we saw a season ago while they were under the tutelage of Mr. Abdul Rahim. But with the coaching change in general, I do think that things are going to slow down a little bit with regards to this offense, and it's been very surprising that they have not given Cole LaRue much more playing time, as last season he shot about 40% from three-point range. I certainly thought that he was going to be a guy that was going to be a bit more of a spark in the backcourt for the team. They still have Tyrell Burden, who's been able to do a nice job doling it out after last season. He gave the team 4+ assists per contest and really led the way with his 24 points yesterday. They also bring in Jamel King. He was over at West Virginia a season ago, but was limited to 9 minutes, and it wasn't due to foul issues yesterday. I think that he went out with an injury, and that does knock this Kennesaw State team a little bit, but even with that, I'm going to be willing to take the points. I set my line at a 4.5, even accounting for that, because with East Carolina, this team has been all out of sorts as they're currently dealing with an illness to Brandon Johnson. It's not an injury per se, but he has just been out of the fold the last few days in general, dealing with the illness. Got back yesterday. He was shaky with regards to his offense, was good down low though. He had 10 points, 10 boards on 9 total shots, went 1 of 6 from 3-point range, so that does help out ECU a little bit, but I have to wonder if he's going to be fully at 100%, and I was just expecting a little bit more in general out of Bobby Pettiford in terms of a scoring perspective. He's been able to do a nice job giving out 4 assists per contest with the former top 150 recruit. Right now he's been able to give the team about 7 points per contest. You just would like to see a little bit more there when it comes to the guys coming off the bench. Caleb McCown, Jaden Walker, they have been relatively solid scorers for the team, but for Kennesaw State, you still do have Dedmon Robinson, who's been able to give you 10 rebounds per game. He should be able to match up very well with Brandon Johnson, and I think the X factor here, Quincy Amiokoya, hopefully I said that correctly. He came in from Temple a few seasons ago. Last year was a off-the-bench scorer that shot about 37.5% from 3. It's really elevated with 10 points per contest for East Carolina. We've already seen this team have a few disappointing losses to Northeastern, to USC Upstate, both on their home floor, and I do think that Kennesaw State, a team that brings back quite a bit from their NCAA tournament run a season ago, going to be able to hold in there in a game that I think has a few fewer possessions than a lot of people are thinking. I set my total at 146.5, diving in on the under end. Going to be willing to take north of 6 here. Kennesaw State set them as a 4.5-point underdog, 36-5-11, 36-5-12. Monmouth plays host to Lehigh. Lehigh is a favorite of a 1 point in some books, and other books are an underdog of a point. Totals between 146 and 146.5. I said Lehigh is a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to either lay the point with them, or if I'm able to get like even money on the money line, something like that, all the better, as I do think that for Lehigh, they are just a better team in general as Monmouth. They might have the best player on the floor. That would be Xander Rice. He has come back home to play for his father and King Rice, and he has been tremendous as he's logging 22 points per contest. He has great familiarity, by the way, with this Lehigh bunch, as he was playing for Bucknell out there in the Patriot League a season ago, where he was logging 14 points per contest, and thus far this season for Rice, he's shooting about 33% from 3, but he's also getting to the free throw line 7.5 times per contest, shooting 91% at the charity stripe. He's been a real elevator for a Monmouth team that pass he and along with Jack Collins, and Collins has been great. 13 points, 8.5 boards. You don't have anyone else giving you north of 6 points per contest. You got one other player that gives you north of 3.7 rebounds per game. That'd be Nikita Kuznetsovsky. Hopefully I said that correctly. His last name has like 15 letters in it, but I mean, the guy Nikita, he's been able to do a solid job as well. But for Monmouth, they should see a little bit of a cooling off from their 37% three-point shooting a season ago. They shot 28.8% from three-point land, and for this Lehigh team, you do have quite a few guys back from a season ago. Tyler Whitney Sidney along with Keith Higgins. These two guys have done a nice job, both giving you 14.5 points per contest apiece. Both of these guys are better three-point shooters than what they've shown thus far this season. Combined to shoot about 31% from three-point range, but I do think that Tom Parlin, who's been able to give you 7 boards per contest, going to be able to elevate. And the question for Lehigh is, can you see these guys like a Jalen St. Clair, who's been with the program for a few seasons but has never really been able to take off? Someone like freshman Cam Gillis. Can they just give a little bit of support to your big two and Whitney Sidney along with Higgins? And I do think that the answer is yes. JT Chan is able to give you a few rebounds as well. Lehigh's had their turnover issues. And for Monmouth, they're not the worst team at being able to generate steals, but we've also seen Lehigh do a solid job on that front as well. And this is also a Monmouth team that has been feast or famine with their offense. Sans that game where they scored 73 points against West Virginia, 61 or fewer for them in their first games of the season. Meanwhile, Lehigh, they're very much a team that needs to be able to sink threes to be able to get things going. You've got a Monmouth team that does a relatively okay job of being able to guard the three-point arc. So I feel like this total is set pretty much too high. Neither of these teams really play up tempo, so I did set my total at 137, diving in on the under, but I do think that Lehigh, with having Higgins along with Whitney Sidney in the backcourt, going to be enough to be able to get it done. I'm going to be taking a look at Lehigh outright on the money line / as a very slight favorite to go along with the under. 306, 513, 306, 514. New Hampshire is playing host to Marist. Marist is an underdog, 2.5 to 3.5 points, 134 to 135 is your total, and with New Hampshire, I did set them as a favorite of 4.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay it with Marist. This team, year in and year out, does a very good job of being able to guard inside the arc, and then outside the arc, it's just a complete and utter train wreck, and with this New Hampshire team, they're able to do a good job with inside-out basketball with Clarence O'Daniels, who in my opinion is one of the most underrated players in all of college basketball. He averaged a double-double last season. He's picking up right where he left off. 20.5 points, 7.5 boards, shooting 37.5% from three-point range for a New Hampshire team that over the last few seasons has been one of the best teams in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis. Now they have a little bit more rebounding with Trey Woodyard coming over from Valparaiso as a part-time starter a season ago, has really been able to elevate after he was pretty pedestrian a season ago. And now you've got a little bit of pop in the backcourt as well with Ahmad Robinson coming in from the non-Division I level, logging 15 points per game. And for Marist, you lose Patrick Gardner, your heart and soul from a season ago, which means that they've really had to look to Mr. Maximus Allen II to be able to elevate after he spent the beginning part of his career at San Jose State. 6'9", good rim protector for this team, but you really have one guy that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game right now. That'd be Jaden Doty. You've been able to get Isaiah Brickner to be able to give out a few assists, but Marist just really needs Cam Ferris to get online with his three-point shooting and get out there on the floor in general. He's been limited to 8 minutes thus far this season, and I really thought he was going to be an impact guy. Coming in for Robert Morris, he just has been anything but that. As a result, Marist has continued to struggle with their three-point shooting about 31% overall for the season, and we have seen big-time regression as well out of Javon Cooley, who a season ago shot in the mid-30s from 3, 7 points, 4.5 boards, thought that he would be a nice cog for the team this season, averaging 4.3 points, 4 boards, and just really has not taken off thus far this season. So I do like New Hampshire in this spot. I think that Clarence O'Daniels is going to be able to take over this game, and I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a low-scoring grinder. You've got a Marist team that really doesn't throw it in from 3. Neither of these teams really get out of sorts with their style, and for New Hampshire, I think that they're going to do a good job of being able to man up a little bit more on defense, and got a Marist team that has broken the 65-point plateau once thus far this season. So going to be diving in on the under semi total 132.5 and one to lay up to 4 with New Hampshire. 306-515, 306-516. Army is going to be playing against Albany. This is a neutral court environment, and with Albany, you're finding them as 4 to 4.5 point favorites, and your total is anywhere between 137 to as high as a 138.5. With Albany, I did set them as an 8-point favorite. Army has just been absolutely awful thus far this season. I wish I could put it any other way, but they had a coaching change. Pretty much everyone not named Charlie Peterson, great name, is out of the fold for this team, and it's just all sorts of gross right now. For Army, they just need to find someone in the backcourt that could be a reliable scorer for them, as they've got Ryan Curry right now giving you 12 points per contest. He has shot 44% from three-point range, but I don't know if I'm able to buy into that very much long term. And then after that, Jared Cross has been able to give you 7.5 points per contest. After a season ago, he was averaging right around 3 points. His career about 35.5% three-point shooter, but it's never really been featured in the offense other than Charlie Peterson. You don't have anyone else that's really giving you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. And for Albany, Sebastian Thomas was a part-time starter over at Rhode Island a season ago. Has done a nice job being able to give you about 3.5 assists, has made this offense just be more crisp in general. Losing Gerald Drumgoole to the transfer portal was tough, but you retained Jonathan Beagle from a season ago, who's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. I'm still waiting for the emergence of Aaron Reddish. That is the brother of Cam Reddish. He last season shot 37.5% from 3, 8.5 points per contest, and just hasn't been himself thus far this season. But with Albany, you do have Amari Marshall, who comes in from Hofstra. He's been a nice 15-point per game scorer with Albany. You do have some solid three-point shooting in general with this team. Not a team that's going to be able to generate a lot of steals, but Army is not doing a lot of that either. And for Army, this is a bunch that has scored 64 points or fewer in each of their first 4 games of the season. Defense hasn't been bad. They've given up 72 or less in each of their first 4 games, while Albany, they've gotten to at least 70 in every one of their games, and they've given up at least 75 in every one of their games. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. And I do think that with this being on cooling ensuring arena. So a nice neutral court environment that we do see the scoring taper off a little bit. I am willing to set Albany as an 8-point favorite because this is technically out there in the city of Albany, even though it's truly a neutral court game. So going to be willing to lay with Albany. Did set my total at 134. I do think that the lack of offense for Army continues. Looking at the under and looking at Albany, 306, 517, 306, 518. You've got Columbia playing us to Long Island. Long Island is an underdog between 13.5 to 14 points. And your total is anywhere between 151.5 and 153. And with Long Island, I did set them as an underdog of 13.5 points. At 14 or more, I'm going to be willing to take them with Columbia. Of course, I write up a DK Network right I picked fading Columbia, and they went outright against Temple. That was less than terrific, to say the least. And I do think that this is a little bit of an improved Columbia team from a season ago. You bring back Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa, and he has been tremendous. As season ago, he was able to give the team right around 12 points. He doled out 2.5 assists, shot 37% from 3, and now he's got a little bit more help down low because now you do have those guys that were pretty solid as freshmen that showed a little bit of upside, like Blair Thomas, being able to step up a little bit more. He's been able to give you 9 points, 4 boards, versatility as big man, and Zain Adine Bederi, who comes in from Algeria. He, a season ago, was able to give you about 4 boards, 8 points per contest. So I do think that Columbia a little bit better down low. I also do think that Long Island, if they can just gain a little bit of chemistry, they do have some talent on this roster. RJ Green was a starter a season ago that shot in the mid-30s from 3-point range, 9 points, 3.5 assists, 4 boards. He's actually not bad with the ball in his hands, and you do have the Stricklands, as their father is actually the coach, and Rod Strickland. You all remember him from his days in the NBA, but you're bringing Terrell and Ty Strickland. Ty is a very well-traveled gentleman that comes in from Georgia Southern a season ago, where he was able to do a solid job giving the team right around about 7.5 points per contest out there in the Sun Belt. And then Terrell Strickland was a part of that James Madison team from the season ago, was able to do a nice job being able to generate some steals, has good active hands, and yet the defense has been relatively rough. Just the main reason why is because you don't have a lot of size with this team. Tana Copa, who's 6'6", has had to be one of the main rebounders for the team, so that's a little bit of an issue going up against a Columbia team that has some question marks in the backcourt. In the front court, they have been relatively rock solid, but I do think that this is going to be a game that gets cranked up tempo. Columbia not shy to run. Long Island, ever since Rod Strickland took over the program, they have been one of the fastest teams in all of college basketball as well. So, circumstance where I did set my total at a 149.5. I think we perhaps went a little bit too far because I don't know if either of these teams able to hit enough shots to be able to do their part on this total. So, looking at the under, and at 14 or more, going to be taking a look at Long Island. 306, 519, 306, 520. Maryland is going to be playing UMBC. UMBC is a underdog of 19 to 20 points. Your totals between 140 and 142.5. And with Maryland, I did set them as a 17-point favorite, so I'm going to be able to take the points with the UMBC. This Maryland team is very stout defensively. They're actually one of the best in all of college basketball. You've got Dante Scott, who's been able to do a solid job down low, along Julian Reese. Their offense just has not been able to develop too much in general. You bring back a lot of the pieces from a season ago as well, but they just weren't really a great three-point shooting team to start with last year, and last year they were actually just as bad at home as they were on the road a season ago as well. But that said, you do have a UMBC bunch that I think could hold in there because they do have Kadarius Smith, who's been able to make some nice contributions coming in from USC Upstate, where he was a part-time starter a season ago. He's been able to log 16 points, been able to show a little bit of range, grab about 4 rebounds per contest. And for UMBC, when it comes to this backcourt, Marcus Banks Jr. comes in from Western Carolina. It's been a nice surprise as well, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Bryce Johnson, nice off-the-ball scorer that's been able to give the team 11 points per contest coming in from Chicago State. As overall for UMBC, they're shooting 38.5% from 3. Turnovers are still a little bit high, but if you're able to get Max Lucero Lloyd, who he comes in from Penn to be able to give you a little bit more down low. He's been able to log about 4.5 rebounds per game. That could be more like 5.5. You're starting to add something with this team. Meanwhile, for Maryland, you've had Jameer Young be Mr. Do-It-All with 13.5 points, 4.8 assists, but who's going to be that guy that steps up in the backcourt to be able to help him out? Because many people thought that was going to be the freshman, Deshaun Harris-Smith, and he to this point has been a bit disappointing with about 9 points per contest. He'll shoot better than 10% from 3-point range when it's all said and done, but that's been a bit of an issue. Noah Batchelor, the former top 100 recruit, hasn't really been able to give you too much either, so I do think that this is going to be more of a defense-oriented game. UMBC doesn't necessarily play up-tempo. They're just rough with their defense, pretty good on offense, but I do think that this turns a little bit more defense-oriented Wilmington, but UMBC hits enough shots to be able to hang in there. So set my line at 17, going to be taking the points with UMBC. Made my total 137, so also diving under. 306-521, 306-522. It is Davidson, and they play us a Boston U. Boston U between a 14 to a 15.5 point underdog. Totals between 132 and 133.5. Did set my line at a 15.5. We're seeing mostly 15s out there, and at a 15, I wouldn't want to lay really anything more than that, but would be willing to lay the number. As for Boston U, they're just completely gutted from a season ago. They lose pretty much 6 out of their top 7 scorers from a season ago. You don't have a single guy that's giving you north of 10 points per contest. They're shooting 34% from 3, but they're playing at one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball because they're really trying to find that trigger man. Miles Brewster has been bringing up the ball quite a bit after he gave the team about 4.5 points per contest a season ago, and he's really one of the main holdovers in that backcourt, and just don't have a lot down low either. You've been able to get about 5.5 rebounds per game out of Otto Landrum, who was a bit of an afterthought down low for the team a season ago, and Davidson, even though they've got some moving parts with someone like a Bobby Durkin who comes in as a freshman, they just have more ability in general. You also have David Skogman, so he will give you 11.6 boards. Good versatility as well. It's Davidson. They always do a good job of finding these guys that have size, are able to pop threes. Last year with Sam Meninga, being able to take the load off of Foster Lawyer, and this season, you don't necessarily have that Foster Lawyer type scorer, but I think that Davidson might be better off because you haven't been able to have someone like a Connor Kuchera give you 8 points, Grant Huffman giving you about 8.5 points, 6 boards. You've got a lot of guys just making really good contributions. Davidson has been able to do a nice job taking care of the ball. It is the second coming of the McKillop family with Davidson, and right now it's going quite well, and they get a Boston U team that, they're just down in general, and for Boston U, playing at one of the slowest paces in all of college basketball and just unable to put the ball in the basket since that just outburst that they had against Bryant. They have actually failed to get past the 60-point plateau in 3 out of their last 4 games. So it is a spot where with Davidson, I did set them as a 15.5 point favorite. I think that they are able to overcome the losses that they took to Clemson and ETSU coming in. So want to lay the number, and going to be taking a look at this total under as semi-total more around a 131.5. 306-523, 306-524. Ball State plays OC USC Upstate. Upstate is an underdog of 2.5 points, and your totals between 142.5 and 143. And with Ball State, I did set them as a favorite of 5.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number with USC Upstate. It's been a very rock-solid start to the season for them. They very nearly go on the road and knock off Vanderbilt. This team was able to take down East Carolina. I do have some questions with how they're going to be able to match up with Bashir Jihad, though. It's been very good for Ball State. He's a mid-33 point shooter who's currently logging 16 points, 5.5 boards per game after a season ago. And he was a good off-the-bench sort of scorer for this team. And now for USC Upstate, just don't have a lot of rebounding. Amir Langlis, who began his career at West Virginia, is able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, but you also don't have that go-to three-point shooter like you had with Jordan Gainey a season ago. Now, credit is due. Dre Borneau has been able to give you 15-plus points per contest, and Miguel Ayesa a season ago was over at William & Mary and was a solid 6-point per game scorer who's been a career 37% three-point shooter. He's now shooting 46.5% from distance, but for USC Upstate, I don't know how realistic their 39.3% three-point shooting is. I think that'll probably be more like 36, 37 when it's all said and done, so I do expect a little bit of a drop-off. They bring in Jorge Ochoa, who comes in from Vermont after he was a bit of an afterthought in their backcourt, and I think that he'll be able to deliver a little bit of production as well. But for Ball State, despite the fact that they lose Jalen Sellers in the backcourt, they pick up the LMU transfer in Jalen Anderson, who I think brings this team just a very good ability from three-point range last year at about 10 points, shot 35.5% from 3 in the WCC. This is the sort of system that seems to fit him well, very, very mid-tempo. And then Mikey Pearson at 6'7", he's bearing about 40% of his series, chipping in 4 boards, 9 points per contest. It's not necessarily a Ball State team with ideal size with Peyton Sparks out the full, but Mason Jones, he's 6'7" freshman, has been able to do a good job on the glass, being able to lend some nice production. I think that that's going to be enough for Ball State to be able to win down low against a USC Upstate team that has good guard play, has some questionable size down low. And for Ball State, we have been noticing that they've been playing a little bit more slowly this year in USC Upstate. They're outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game as well. So a spot where I'm going to be taking a look at the under, semi-total 139.5, and with Ball State, one to lay up to 5 with them. 306-525, 306-526. It is TCU. They play us Alcorn State. Alcorn State, a massive underdog of between 27 and 27.5 points. And total on this game, finding it anywhere between 150.5 and 151. Set TCU as a 26-point favorite. Now that we're getting to 27, I'm going to be taking a shot on Alcorn State. Alcorn State has actually won the SWAC regular season title each of the last 2 seasons, and though they do lose a few guys like Dominic Brewster from a season ago, they do return a lot of their fulcrum pieces like Jeremiah Kendall, who's been really good down low, averaging 18.5 points, 10 boards per contest. He has been really the main concept for them down low in a system in which you really don't have a lot of other guys that are able to deliver a lot of size. So that is a little bit of an issue, but what I also like for Alcorn State, they bring in Jalen Hawkins, who, when he was really healthy and firing all cylinders a few seasons ago at Norfolk State during the 2021-22 campaign, delivered 13 points per contest, shot in the mid-30s from three-point range. I think that he's got tremendous upside for this team. You've also got Byron Joshua, who's been able to do a nice job, giving you 3 assists, steal and a half, 9.5 points per game. Alcorn State always is a little bit of a rough three-point shooting team at about 28%, but really like the way that they are showing out. Meanwhile, for TCU, they've done a great job of implementing a lot of pieces via the transfer portal as Jameer Nelson Jr. has gotten down the system. Not quite the 20-point per game scorer that he was at Delaware a season ago, but still giving you 13 points. Well, he's been a little bit of a liability from three-point range, but is able to dole out 3.8 assists per contest. Now, with TCU, they've really sped up their system over the last few seasons under Jamie Dixon, and it has caused them to get a little bit out of sorts. A little bit north of 14 turnovers per game. They do have, finally, some good three-point shooting after the last few seasons. That's really been their kryptonite. Avery Anderson and Trey Tennyson are combining for 18 points, shooting north of 45% from three between the two of them, but those 14 turnovers per game is a little bit unsettling as TCU, they've done a good job of being able to rip the ball away. They're getting nearly 12 steals per game. Alcorn State, though, is getting just under 10 steals per game as well. That has really been a calling card for them. So it's a little bit of an interesting ordeal. I do think that TCU is going to be looking to be in a little bit more control on TCU as the season has gone along. They've gotten better and better on the defensive side of things, allowing 60 or fewer in each of the last 3 games. You've got an Alcorn State team that I think they rise up after they scored just 49 against Michigan State, but I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game, and I do think that TCU is going to push off the throttle just a little bit. Set my total at 148, so here on north of 150, diving in on the under with Alcorn State, won't take 27 with them, 306-527, 306-528. Auburn plays us to Alabama A&M. A&M, an underdog of between 30 and 31.5 points, and your totals between 152.5 and 154.5. I said Auburn has 27.5 point favorites. Going to be willing to take the points once again, as with this Alabama A&M team, they are in a little bit of a transition as Blaze Obiana, he is gone from last season as he was a 7-footer that was able to do a nice job down low, but you do retain Dallin Smith, and Dallin Smith has been very good in this system, shooting about 40% from 3, entering into yesterday, 16 points per contest, and with this Alabama A&M team, just as a whole, you do have quite a few versatile pieces, as you've been able to get right around 8 points out of Caleb Blackwell. Blackwell is someone that comes in after he a season ago was just robbed due to injury. I think that he's going to be able to lend some good production. Would like to see a little bit more scoring out of EJ Williams, who's been a part-time starter for the team throughout his career, right around 4 boards per contest. That's right on par with his career averages, but you've also been able to have Mr. McLean and Dylan McLean come in as a non-Division I transfer, shooting the mid-30s from three-point range, offer about a steal and a half per game, going up against an Auburn team that they certainly do look to push tempo. As for this Auburn bunch, they've got much better three-point shooting than a season ago. Last year just was not representative of what they are this season, and G&I Broom has really been cleaning up in terms of being able to space the floor as well. 17 points, 8.5 boards. Now he's popping a few threes. That's a big X factor for his game. You bring back Jalen Williams, who was a solid three-point shooter from season ago. He's able to help out down low with 6.5 rebounds per game. You've got Dylan Cardwell, who's a nice rim protector for the team, but the likes of Cad Baker-Mazara, who is a very highly touted junior college transfer, has come in. He's been able to give the team some outside shooting. Aiden Holloway, he's a star freshman that has been tremendous in giving out 4.3 assists, fewer than 2 turnovers per game. Auburn sometimes does get a little bit loose with the ball, but all in all, I do like what I'm seeing there, but I also do think that this Alabama A&M backcourt has a little bit of something, and I do think that for Alabama A&M, they're going to hit just enough shots to be able to hang within 30, set my line at a 27.5, so taking a look at the points, Auburn certainly looking to push tempo and is much better on offense this season than they were a season ago. So going to be taking a look at the over, set my total 155.5, and taking the points with Alabama A&M. Now we have my DK Network Rider pick, 306-529, 306-530. Oral Roberts is going to be playing us at Texas Southern. Texas Southern between an 8 to a 9 point underdog, and your total is 143. I said Oral Roberts as a 14.5 point favorite. My write-up is going to be on Oral Roberts. Got a Texas Southern team that's entered into Monday, averaging 5.1 points per 100 possessions, fewer than any other team in all of college basketball. Now, this is a little bit of a byproduct from the competition that they've been playing. They have to play all these bye games against the likes of Arizona State, Creighton. You just go down the list, and we typically find Texas Southern picking off one of these teams. I don't think the one that they pick off is Oral Roberts, so they're just really out of sorts with their offense. I still remember P.J. Henry in that game against Arizona State. He had 12 points on 24 field goal attempts, and he's right now one of the lone guys that you can look to that can actually give you a fighting chance of getting a shot to be able to go down. Got a lot of moving parts with Texas Southern as they lost 3 other top 4 scorers from a season ago. Meanwhile, for Oral Roberts, while they do lose their coach, they lose Max Asmith from a season ago, I do think that Russell Springman has done a good job of being able to retain quite a few of the pieces from last season as he brings back 4 of their top 8 scorers from last year, with 3 of them shooting at least 39% from distance season ago. Overall, Oral Roberts only shooting about 31.5% from 3. They also have had to play a relatively rough schedule as well, but you've got Deshaun Weaver, Kareem Thompson, both being able to give you north of 5 boards per contest and a double-figure amount of points, and Jalen Bedford, he's been able to be a nice contributor coming in from the non-Division I level, 10 points, 5 boards, so I do think that there's a little bit of upside there, and Oral Roberts was better on the defensive side of things last year than they have been in past years. They were able to crack the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Biggest thing for Oral Roberts is that they're going to need to find a little bit of rebounding. Other than Deshaun Weaver, don't have anyone north of 5.3 rebounds per game. But not like Texas Southern is doing an amazing job on the glass as well. Jameer Young right now leads the way with 5.5 rebounds per game. With Oral Roberts, they're 348th in terms of rebound rate, 288th for Texas Southern. You'd like to see that be a little bit better. Texas Southern certainly giving up the arc as well, 263rd in the country in opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I think that Texas Southern is in for a very rough year, and I do think that Oral Roberts is going to be able to take advantage of a Texas Southern team that's really on defense and has been the worst team analytically in terms of offense in all of college basketball. My DK Network right pick, that is going to be on Oral Roberts laying the number. I set them as a 14.5 point favorite and set my total at 142.5. I just flat out don't think that Texas Southern does their part with this total. Going to be diving in on the under, and my right pick, that is going to be on Oral Roberts laying the number. 3-6-5-31, 3-6-5-32. Arkansas Pine Bluff on the road against Minnesota. Minnesota between 17 and 18.5 point favorites. Totals between 153 and 153.5. Opener on this game was 20. The market agrees with me that opened up way too high, and I still see a lot of meat on the bone. I did set this line at 13, so going to be taking a look at the points with Pine Bluff. You've got a Minnesota team that did bring in Mike Mitchell via the transfer portal. He was a relatively solid scorer over at Pepperdine a season ago, and while Elijah Hawkins is able to do a nice job of being able to pop threes, did give Howard about 13 points, 6 assists per contest a season ago. He also led all of college basketball in terms of turnovers, so that's a little bit unsightly for a Minnesota team that last season was 335th in all of college basketball. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, no doubt about it, Dawson Garcia is going to be the best player out there on the floor at 6'11", capable of popping threes. Just a nice job being able to stretch a floor, hit the glass, but I love what I've seen. I have Kylan Milton. Milton, who began his career at Western Kentucky, he has really elevated this year. North of 23 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, currently shooting 58% from 3. I don't think he's going to continue that, but I absolutely love the way that he's able to work along with Rashad Williams, who I feel like really takes the pressure off of him. Because with Rashad Williams, he's always got the green light to shoot. During the 2019-20 season, his 12.6 three-pointers attempted per game, most we have seen pretty much in this millennium. I mean, just absolutely hilarious. He's been able to give the team 18.5 points per contest, and then for Pine Bluff, while they lose the battle down low, I do like the fact that Joe French has really elevated his game. He used to be a guy that did nothing but shoot threes, and I mean, for the last 3 seasons, he has shot north of 40% from distance, but now he's grabbing 5 boards. Now he's giving you 3 assists on top of his shooting, so that's been very big for this team. You've been able to have Ismail Plett be able to give you about 4 to 5 rebounds per game, shoring things up down low, and for Minnesota, while I do think that they should be able to get the job done, they should not have opened up as right around 20-point favorites. I set my line at 13. 13. I'm going to be one to take the points with Pine Bluff, and did set my total out of 145. Pine Bluff, they certainly are looking to push tempo. Minnesota, they're more of a slow and controlled team, and I do think that this game is going to be slowed down a little bit because Minnesota has a bit more size. So going to be diving in on the under and going to be taking the points with Pine Bluff. 3 of 6-5-33, 3 of 6-5-34. Lemoyne is on the road facing off against Cal State Northridge. With CSUN, they are a favorite of 13 points. Your total is between 151 and 151.5. I did set CSUN as a favorite of 16 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Lemoyne. They, for one, are coming off of just a really long road trip in general, and this is another leg of it. So, they are just really going through it at this point. And for two, with this Lemoyne team, you got a team that is transferring up to pretty much a Division I level after they were mediocre at the D2 level a season ago, and they have absolutely no size whatsoever. Cameron Cleary, who comes in from Ball State, has been able to give you about 11 points, 6.5 boards, and he leads the team in both major categories. You need to get more down low out of the Siena transfer, Luke Sutherland. He's 6'7", he's grabbed 2.5 rebounds per contest. It's like he's allergic to being able to hit the glass, and right now the team has two guys who are averaging north of 3.4 rebounds per game. Credit to Lemoyne, they've only turned the ball over 9 times per contest, but hasn't really led to points because they don't necessarily have great shooting. And for CSUN, they have Andy Newman, who was coaching over at Cal State Bernardino a season ago, take over, and he retained Deshaun Elniken, Ciante Bostic. These two guys have done a great job of being able to provide about 35 points per contest. Both are shooting well north of 40% from three. Do think we're going to see a little bit of Coolidge there, but you also brought in some guys from the non-Division I level to be able to help out as well. You bring in the Texas A&M Corpus Christi transfer and Jasmine Senga as well to be able to help out. He's 6'8". He's been able to do a solid job of being able to give this team a little bit of something down low in terms of their defense, along with 8.5 points per contest. And then you've got Keontae Jones, who was at the non-D1 level a season ago, 12 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, 6'6" combo player that's able to bury some threes. CSUN very much looking to crank up the tempo. Not a team that's going to generate a ton of steals, but is a team that's going to hurt you from the outside. And with Lemoyne, they've just been brutal on defense. In their 3 games against Division I opponents, actually 4 games against Division I opponents, giving up north of 80 points in every one of them. Meanwhile, you've got a CSUN team that's starting to really rack up the points. They've gotten to at least 74 in every single game thus far this season. So it's a good old situation if something's got to give. I did set my total at 148. I just don't know if Lemoyne does their part with regards to the total. I think that CSUN has a good chance of being able to get to 80 plus and be able to dominate on that front. I just don't know if Lemoyne is able to hold up though. So I'm going to be taking a look at the under. And with CSUN, did set them at 16-point favorites. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And these last 2 games are out there from the Cancun Challenge. 306-535, 306-536. Radford and Morgan State to battle from Hard Rock Arena. Radford, a 13 to a 13.5 point favorite. And your total between 139.5 and 142. I set Morgan State as an underdog of 12.5 points. Being able to get 13 or more, I'm going to be willing to take them. I do think that there's a little bit of upside for Morgan State. It has been a no good, very bad, terrible start to the season for them, but you just take a look at the actual talent on the roster. We've got someone in Miles Thompson who 2 seasons ago, before having his season pretty much ended before it started due to injury last season, and over at St. Francis of Pennsylvania, 11 points on 40% three-point shooting as a 6'7", a little bit of a combo player. You've got Winston Tabbs, who, while he was over at Boston College for 2 seasons, was averaging about 13 points per game. You've got someone like Cameron Hobbs, who has been in the system for quite a while. Last season, was able to give the team 8.5 points, 2.5 assists, shot 45% from three-point range. So there's actual pieces here to be able to piggyback off of and to be able to help this team out. They go up against a Radford team that has a nice trio out there in the backcourt. DeQuan Smith, Keenan Giles, Brian Antoine. These 3 guys are all able to generate a combined about 4.5 steals per contest. Antoine has been a little bit down with his overall scoring, but shooting 40% from three-point range. You've had DeQuan Smith do a solid job being able to give you a little bit of rebounding, while Giles has been that main scorer with 17.5 points per contest, and then Justin Archer is able to give you about 9 rebounds per game. But past Archer, you don't necessarily have ideal rebounding with this team. TJ Naismith has been able to do a okay job coming in from Lenore Rhine, a non-Division I school. He's been able to do a solid job being able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. He was very solid at the non-Division I level with a little bit of versatility. Truth Harris, actual name, he comes over from ETSU after he dropped down to the non-Division I level. He's been able to do a nice job of being an ancillary piece, along Chandler Turner, who was averaging about 6 rebounds per game over at Bowling Green. Certainly, I do think that Radford is able to get it done, but Radford, not a team that's really looking to crank it up tempo. They have given up 70-plus points in their last 2 games, but that was against VCU and James Madison, 2 very, very good opponents. I do think that Morgan State team that has been a little bit snake-bit thus far this season. They've had 17 turnovers per contest. I do think that they're going to be able to clean up their act just a little bit, so it is a spot where I'm going to be willing to take the points with Morgan State. Did set my total at 144.5. Morgan State over the last 3 seasons has been in the top 20 in terms of possessions per game in every one of them, so I do think that this gets cranked up tempo. Looking at the over, and willing to take the points with Morgan State, where you have things up with 306-537, 306-538. Northern Colorado is going to be playing us to Chicago State. Chicago State, and this is out there at the Cancun Challenge, so actual neutral court game is a 5.5-point underdog. Totals between 139 and 142, and with Chicago State, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Chicago State. Because Chicago State is a Division I independent, all of these games just mean more for them, just because I don't think that they're going to be getting a bid to the NCAA tournament anytime soon, but for Chicago State, Wesley Carden might actually be the best player out there on the floor. 17 points, 6 boards, 2.5 assists. Last year shot 34.5% from 3, a former top 200 recruit of Sam Amford. And for Northern Colorado, without Dalton Connect out there, got to be wondering who's really going to be that takeover scorer for the team. Perhaps it's going to be the non-Division I transfer in DeJour Reeves, who has come in and has been able to give the team 15 points per contest, do like what he's been able to bring to the table, but at the same time, you're taking a shot on St. Thomas, who was expected to do good things at Loyal Chicago last season, and he's been good down low. 14 points, 11.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 steals. I like his game. Northern Colorado, uncharacteristically, is a rough shooting team this year, though. Shooting 29% from the outside. The defense is a little bit improved, but outside of St. Thomas, you don't have a single guy giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. Riley Abercrombie, he needs his fix because he's 6'9", and last season was about a 43% three-point shooter. It's been a little bit more out of sorts this year. It's a Northern Colorado team that is going with a little bit more size because they just don't have the guard play that they had a season ago. Brock Wisney is a 6'9" gentleman that is able to space out the floor a little bit by popping threes, but not necessarily the world's greatest three-point shooter as well. And for Chicago State, having someone like Sean Corbett give you 7.5 rebounds per game, a Chicago State team that as a whole, everyone out there on the floor is capable of being able to shoot threes. You bring in Noble Crawford, the LIU transfer, has been able to give you a little bit of versatility as well. I do think that that'll allow Chicago State to be a hold in this game, and Chicago State enters shooting 36.5% from the floor, 24% from 3, and yet has been relatively wily in a lot of their games. So, going to be taking a look at Chicago State catching the points. I do think that Northern Colorado is going to be playing quite a bit more slowly this year, and Chicago State has been one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball last few seasons as well. So diving in on the under, going to be willing to take the points with Chicago State as well, and that wraps things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Nick Lorensen, does great work over at Mid-Major Madness. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @Unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast by that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season, which means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.